All right, 8:30, we'll call the zoning committee meeting to order. We have a roll call, please.
Jesse Batcher,
Here.
Ron Buckholz,
Present.
Tweet Schuman,
Here.
Stacy Hessel. Here. John Righammer.
Here.
Thank you.
Please rise for the. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Yeah, read the statement of committee hearing procedure and statement of hearing notice. This full statement of including directions for individuals wishing to speak at public hearing to be conducted at this zoning committee meeting are available at the front of this room next to the agenda for today's meeting. The statement of committee and hearing procedure document is hereby incorporated into the record for this committee hearing. Any public hearing conducted at today's committee meeting has been published as a Class 2 notice in accordance with Chapter 985 Wisconsin statutes in the Sawyer County Record and Sawyer County Gazette and posted. Right. Do you have something, Andy? No.
I do not. Sorry, I was on mute. I do not. I apologize, Mr. Chair.
Okay, no problem. So the previous minutes, have we all had a chance to look those over? Yes. So do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion, Mr. Chair, to approve the minutes.
Thank you. Motion by Mr. Buckles.
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Schuman. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that passes. Okay, public comment, please. No comment time is intended for general public comments, not comments relating to a specific application before this committee. Each agenda item requiring a public hearing will have its public hearing conducted just prior to the application being considered by this committee. If you wish to speak on a specific agenda item, we encourage you to hold your comments till then. So if you're speaking on a specific agenda item, then you'll have time during the public hearing for that item to speak. If you have public comments that are not related to an agenda item, now's the time that you can speak to whatever, and you'll have 3 minutes to do so.
First one I have is for Linda Zomer.
Linda Zilmer, 902 Holly Hill Lane, Birchwood, Wisconsin, Edgewater property owner. And I'm speaking in general with regard to the zoning committee's rules and bylaws. Previously, a 2-2 or a tied decision would have been deemed a denial, and it would have gone forward to county board for either to ratify the denial or to send it back. Under the amended committee rules and bylaws, it does not specify what a 2-2, what happens when there's a tie decision. And it just says that you have to have a majority opinion for either approval or denial. So that I would hope would get clarified in the future. And my concern for today is that when a reconsideration is sent from the county back to the committee, it's stated that it's a rehearing. And I would interpret that a rehearing is to start over and to give both the town and the zoning committee the ability to correct any errors or provide the information that's needed. As I understand, when I saw on Tuesday night the letter that went to the Edgewater Town Board, they were not requested to provide an opinion, as well as the neighbors' letters did not. So I really am concerned with your rules being vague and how today will proceed. Thank you.
That's all I have for sheets for public comment.
Okay, anybody else for public comments? Anybody online? No. All right, moving on. First rezone, the public hearing, the town of Wynn to rezone number 22-008, owner Terrence Pettit, part of the southwest one quarter, the southwest one quarter, section 9, township 38, north range 5 west, parcel 032-538-09-3306, 6.55 total acres zoned agricultural 1.
Purpose of the request is to rezone to residential recreational 2 to possibly split the property into less than a 5-acre parcel. As per my staff report, again, there's additional maps included in that. Within the Ag 1 zone district, you would need a minimum of 5 acres and 300 feet of width. Thus, the zone district change is being requested. The Town of Winters comprehensive plan shows this area as residential with a mixing of zone districts between Ag 1, residential recreational 2, and residential recreational 1, with similar uses occurring. The anticipated lot size of this rezone is, if approved, would be 2 lots at approximately 4 acres per lot. This area currently is not being farmed for agricultural use. By action of the town board, motion was approved. Ronald Barnaby, chairman, Ronald Fandry, supervisor, John Sherliski, supervisor. The opinion letters were sent out. 4 were sent out. 1 was returned with no objections. Do you have a chance to read that? Yes. Acknowledged by all committee members. You had a chance to read the opinion letters that were sent out. That is all.
Okay, thank you, Jay. Need a motion to go into public hearing.
So moved.
We have a motion by Ms.
Second.
Hessel, second by Mr. Buckholz. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we are in public hearing. Is the applicant Terrence Pettit or a representative here?
Yes.
Would you like to speak, sir?
No. Are there any questions?
You have to speak, you have to come up to the mic and at least state your name if you're gonna
Because we have
say that you have no
people,
comments for it.
microphones up there.
Yep, Terrence Pettit. I'm just proposing the possible split of the 6.55. There is an encroachment on adjoining property, which I own also. And the proposed split may go under 5 acres to settle the encroachment. And that's it. So,
Right. So my math might be a little off, but it's 6.5 acres, but you
Yep.
said you want to split into two
2
4 acres.
Yep.
Lots,
No,
So,
yeah, that was a typo. So,
okay,
So the encroachment would take care of, you know, the possibly over 2 acres, which would
okay,
reduce the remaining lot. So
all right. Thank you. Any other questions?
Yeah. Pettit, I see in the map you provided us, there is quite a bit of open land there between these 2 lots. You say it doesn't, it's not farmed or there's nothing
No,
going on with those?
no.
And then Jay, is this compatible with the surrounding area as far as, is the rest of the land here Ag 1 or forestry? I see it's pretty woody.
Yeah, so I'll bring out the kind of the larger overview. There is a mixing of zone districts in this area. The lighter brown or kind of darkish orange color that you see on the screen, that's residential recreational 1. That one right in the middle that Mr. Pettit also owns is already zoned residential recreational 2. It's that 6-acre parcel to the north that's zoned agricultural. In order to further subdivide that and potentially then combine it back with the lot to the south, it would need to be rezoned to that residential recreational 2.
Okay,
So there is a mixing of zone districts throughout this area.
thank you, Mr. Pettit. Is there anyone present who would like to speak in favor of this rezone? Anyone who would like to speak in opposition to this rezone request? No hand up. Okay. Need a motion to come out.
I'll make that motion,
We have a
Mr.
motion
Chair.
by Mr. Buckholz to come out of public hearing, second by Mr. Schuman. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Discussion action, Town of Winter, rezone number 22-008, owner Terrence Pettit. Legal description is previously read into record. Purpose of the request is rezone the 6.55 total acre parcel of agricultural 1 to residential recreational 2.
Okay, committee, I think we have enough information. We have a motion by Mr. Schuman to,
Well, I just have a comment. Jay, I need to clarify that with these opinion letters that were sent out, were there any objections?
No, there was one opinion letter sent out and it was no objections. There was additional comments on it. I have no objections. Concern of additional traffic and or crime increase What is the intent besides zone change of this property splitting? If the intent is to split the parcels to build homes and make into rental properties, then I do have an objection to this. The concern of the hunting impact is a big concern. I can't read that portion. Buying of my current property, I was hunting. Nothing is said for the future use or intent of splitting the parcel. If the intent is to simply split the parcel, then I have no objections to this.
Mr. Chair? Yes.
I'd like to ask Mr. Pettit a question again. Mr. Pettit, what are you gonna do? Why is the reason you wanna split these? Split that.
Well,
You have to come up to the mic.
Come up to the mic, please.
okay, so that's to settle the encroachment on the portion that I already own. So then it would drop it under 5 acres, which there's possible for a potential sale for that less than 5 acre parcel. So, but I don't have any intentions of building rentals or anything like that. So,
Yeah.
Yep.
When Mr. Pettit first came to me, he had proposed kind of this map that you have up in front of you is to move the, again, you're looking at the lot to the south that's zoned residential recreational 2. And it's to move that lot line further north. But the only way you can move that lot line further north is if it's in the same zone district. So the lot to the south would be the one lot that would be slightly less than 5 acres, and the lot to the north that would be slightly less than 5 acres. So instead of going to ag, it has to go to RR2 in order to do this split. One of the intents was to, clean up the encroachment, and then what other intents that Mr. Pettit may have after that.
All right. Thank you. Yeah. Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I make a motion to approve this rezone number 22-008.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Buckholz recommending approval of the rezone request. We have a second by Ms. Hessel. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Kathy, could we have a roll call vote on this?
Stacy,
Yes.
Jesse,
Yes.
Tweed,
Yes.
Ron,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
all in favor.
Okay, that passes.
Findings, facts.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Finding of facts, I gotta go back into that. Sorry. Here. I got it right here, Jay. Okay, yeah, that'll work. Finding of facts for approval would be 1 through 9
As part of the staff report.
as part of the staff report, yes. I was gonna throw that in on my motion. I forgot all about it.
It's all good. Moving on, this is a public hearing in the town of Round Lake, rezone number 22-009, owner Travis and Kelly Butterfield, part of the northwest one quarter to the northwest one quarter, section 19, township 41 north, range 6 west, parcel 024-641-192202, 43.62 total acres, zoned agricultural 2. The purpose of the request is to rezone approximately 8.9 total acres to residential recreational 1, to then divide the property into 3 separate lots that are smaller than the 5 acres. As part of the staff report, again, this is a request of 8.9 total acres of the total 43.62 acres of Ag 2 residential 1. The applicant is requesting this is that in the agricultural 2 zone district, you would need a minimum of 5 acres and 300 feet of width. Thus, the zone district change is being requested. The town of Round Lake comprehensive plan, future land use map shows this as private forest. Private forest are areas where the town has seen growth in residential development and is anticipated to see this activity continue. In order to protect natural resource bases and promote low density development, it is recommended that the development be limited to a minimum lot size of 5 acres with 1 single family dwelling and no further subdivision of the lot within this area. There is existing RR1 parcel that was rezoned in 2003 from the larger parcel from Ag 2 to RR1 and is 2.5 total acres. The current use of the land and the surrounding area is light residential, light agricultural, and private forest. This current parcel is not actively engaged in an agricultural activity and is primarily used for recreation and hunting. The 3 proposed parcels are to be approximately 2.5 acres with a strip of RR1 zone property on either side of lot 1 and 3 from the enclosed preliminary map. With the proposed rezone, all zone district dimensional requirements would be met. As per action of the town board, motion was denied. Ralph Hanson, Chairman, Virginia Chayback, Supervisor, Kay Wilson, Supervisor, Donald Stover, Supervisor, James Stratland, Supervisor. Application denied based on the findings of facts. This zoning change would be detrimental to the ecology, wildlife, and etc. Would destroy prime agricultural farmlands. It would not be consistent with the town comprehensive plan signed Victoria Paula, recording as secretary for Kathy McCoy, town clerk. There were 4 opinion letters sent out. I do not believe we received any correspondence back on those opinion letters at this time. That is all.
Okay. Motion to go into public hearing.
So moved, Chairman.
We have a motion by Ms. Schuman, second by Ms. Hessel. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
I have one thing to say.
Yes, ma'am.
Can people please talk louder into this? This is our recording, and if there's a writ or anything like that, I have to know what people are saying.
Does that microphone at the podium pick it up? Yes.
Yes,
Okay. Thank you.
please. Thank you.
Do we have the landowner or the applicant, Travis or Kelly Butterfield, for a representative who would like to speak? Okay. Do we have anybody present who would like to speak in favor of this rezone request? Is there anybody present who would like to speak in opposition?
I do have one here, Ed Metcalf.
Go ahead. Hold up, podium. We'll have 3 minutes, sir.
Ed Metcalf, 9592 West Moose Lake Road. I own the property kitty corner from where this plan development would be. I believe I sent a letter email to what was given on the top of the opposition letter. Did you receive that, Jay, or who does that go to?
It would have gone to me. I don't have.
Okay, I emailed that in about a week ago, and I also emailed the planning commission and Verlage.
Okay,
It's my understanding that Ann sent a email in also in opposition, at least when.
She did. I didn't get a chance to print that one off. We got it last night at 5 o'clock.
Okay, I don't know. I talked to her yesterday.
Okay.
Anyhow, so I guess my big opposition to this is that zoned ag. I farm right across the road. One of the problems that we're consistently seeing in agricultural area is lands that are developed as ag get rezoned into residential. Residential people move into these areas, and then all of a sudden they don't like farmers being next door. They don't like the smell, they don't like the hours, they don't like the noise, they don't like flies, they don't like the potential for overspray of chemicals. And it just makes for a lot of conflict. So my concern here would be if this gets rezoned residential, we're setting a precedent for other people within the area to rezone this to residential to smaller lots, even than the 5 acres ag, which I'm somewhat concerned with the 5 acre lot getting zoned ag. But that's the rule. So the planning commission didn't like it. The town board didn't like it. Obviously, for the reasons I've stated, I'm not in favor of it either.
Okay, thank you. Is there anybody else who would like to speak in opposition to this rezone request? Okay, motion to come out of public hearing.
So moved, Chair.
Motion and a second. Motion by Mr. Buckhold, second by Ms. Hessel. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
This is the discussion action in the town of Round Lake, rezone number 22-009, owner Travis and Kelly Butterfield. Legal description is previously read into record. Purpose of the request is to rezone 8.9 total acres of the total 43.62 acres from Ag 2 to residential recreational 1, to then divide the property into 3 separate lots that are smaller than 5 acres.
Make a motion deny and the findings of 17 and 18.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Regheimer for denial of the rezone request, second by Mr. Schuman.
As part of my staff report, and just to get those in the record, that it would not be consistent with the town and or county comprehensive plan. They would not be compatible with the surrounding uses in the area.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? I would just like to add that, we try to, just as the committee sends things to the full board with the hopes or anticipation that they take our recommendations seriously and vote, similar to the way that we recommend, I feel that we as a zoning committee should take similar action and strongly take the town's recommendation into consideration. In this case, the town denied this rezone request because it is, I would say, in blatant violation of the comprehensive plan. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion for the disapproval or denial of this rezone request? If not, Kathy, do we have a roll call vote?
Yes. Jesse Betcher,
Yes.
Tweed Schuman,
Yes.
Stacy Hessel,
Yes.
John Rickheimer,
Yes.
Ron Buckles.
Yes.
All in favor to deny.
Okay, thank you. All right, moving on. This is the public hearing for the remanding back to zoning committee by county board for reconsideration of rezone number 22-002. This is in the town of Edgewater. Again, rezone number 22-002, owner Hathaway Lodge LLC, part of government lot 4, section 20, township 38 north, range 9 west, parcel 0089382054002, 18.9 total acres, zone forestry 1, including 3.47 acres of shoreline wetland as an overlay district. The purpose of the request is to rezone all F1 underlying zone district to residential recreational 1. The included 3.47 acres of the shoreline wetland is not to be affected within the rezone. The proposed rezoned residential recreational 1 is requested in order to divide the lot and build additional lakeshore cottages. As per the staff report, again, this was remanded back by county board. The specific elements of remanding it back is that zoning committee did not make a recommendation to the county board. It was a 2-2 tie vote, and in conversations with legal counsel, we had no recommendation. It was no recommendation for approval. It was no recommendation for denial. It had no recommendation. At that point, county board remanded it back to zoning committee as to make a recommendation. At that point, though, that motion didn't include remanding it back to the town for consideration. The town's already heard this all the way back, and I believe it was February, which they then did make a motion for approval. But I'll read through the staff report again here. I'll read through the town decisions. We did send out notifications back to adjacent property owners within 300 feet. Now, those were just sent as notifications that it would be remanded back to this committee at this public hearing date. It did not include our standard form of additional comments as far as the opinion letters to be sent in, is that we have a pretty substantial file of opinion letters, which we've sent you throughout this entire process. I'm sure you've gotten quite a bit in your inboxes of the opinion letters that we've received here. But let me read through my staff report, read through the town's information, and then we do have several hearing slips for those wishing to speak on this matter. So again, the purpose of the request is to rezone the 18.9 total acres of F1, forestry 1, to residential recreational 1. The applicant is requesting this in that, as it would remain F1, the zone district requirements would need a minimum of 5 acres and 300 feet of width. Thus, the zone district change is being requested. The town of Edgewater's comprehensive plan as part of their future land use map shows this area as shoreland. Shoreland is defined by the town of Edgewater comprehensive plan, still references the old lake classification system, which is no longer in effect. But these lakes classifications were initially intended to protect environmentally sensitive bodies of water. This property is located on Little Sisabagama and an unnamed lake, which is a wilderness body of water, which would have back before the ordinances were changed at the state level, would have required a 300-foot wide lot on water frontages and a minimum land area of 5 acres. The town comprehensive plan references only up to the old class 3 system, which would have been a minimum density of 1 home per 40,000 square feet of land area and 200 feet of frontage. The town plan further goes on to state that in some cases, natural features and resources along lakes, rivers, and streams may not be conducive of all types of development. While the future land use map has areas representing the 1,000-foot and 300-foot areas pertaining to development requirements as specified by the lake classification system, the areas shown do not imply that any and all types of development types would be allowed. Specific review of areas around lakes, rivers, and streams must be performed. If the property was rezoned to RR1, residential recreational 1, the minimum lot size would be 100 feet of width and 100 feet of width of frontage and 200 feet of depth under the new shoreline zoning rules. And it could most likely accommodate 4 lake lots on Little Sisebagma. Also note that rezones cannot include conditions with the remaining F1 property. This could be divided into 3 lots. But it appears that only 1 lot would be allowed Little Sisebagma Lake access. The surrounding land area is mixed between F1 and RR1 with single family development along Little Sisebagma Lake. As per the town board, that motion was approved, if I can find it. All right, got it. Motion was approved. This was going back to the February 18th. Nope, that's even probably earlier than that. The February 8th town board meeting was approved as a vote of 2-1. Signed Pete Baraboo, chairman, and the late Bill Zimmer, supervisor. And then signed with the attached minutes from Natalie Clemens, the town clerk. I can read any of the other correspondence that you would like into record. I think the main one that I should also indicate to you, which I don't believe was further discussed at the county board level, is that prior to the remanding back of this rezone to zoning committee, there was also a petition filed under Wisconsin statute 59.69 sub 5 sub E sub 5G. Which there is to be over 50% of the adjacent property owners that perimeter this parcel of land that protest the rezone, which if this goes back to county board, well, it will go back to county board regardless of what recommendation this committee makes. It is anticipated that it would require a supermajority vote at county board in order to approve. Report. Yes. They would need to refile this, and that the dates are wrong. They were in the anticipation that county board would make action on it. Ultimately, county board remanded it back. I don't think it would be difficult for them to re-obtain those signatures if they've already gone through the protest petition once. I'm sure they'll end up doing it again when it goes to county board. But I just wanted to get that into record in case these committee members were not aware of that. I wasn't aware.
Mr. Chair, this is Andy Phillips. If I could, can I address the committee very quickly on procedure? Because that's been a bit of a question here, is that when I spoke with the administrator about the process for this, going back to the first time that this committee considered this particular request, we were looking at section 8.1 of this committee's bylaws. And according to 8.1 of the bylaws, a majority vote is required to make any recommendation to the board, whether it be to approve, deny, or postpone consideration of an application. And so in the absence of a majority vote, there was no default that said it's either a recommendation of denial or whatever the case may be. And so really it was no recommendation to the county board. If you all recall, we believe that one of the reasons that there was no majority vote obtained at the previous consideration of this question is that we had one member of the committee, I believe, that had abstained because he or she did not feel they had enough information before them to make a decision as they were new to the committee. And so according to 9.1 of your bylaws, the county board has the opportunity to remand, 9.4 of the bylaws, the county board has the opportunity to remand, and in the event of remand, the matter is placed on the calendar for a subsequent public hearing. There's nothing in the bylaws indicating that new notice goes out to the towns. Frankly, again, in discussions with the administrator, there's been no change in the application. All of the facts are the same as they were from the original application. So realistically, this committee ought to accept the town's correspondence and communication from the original petition, original application for purposes of the consideration today. So I wanted to make it clear that essentially nothing has changed since the last time this was heard, but it needs to be heard again according to the bylaws here. And then this committee can deliberate and make a determination as to what recommendation it will make to the full board.
Okay, thanks, Andy. That actually helps clear a couple things up. Okay, so we need a motion to go into public hearing.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to go into public hearing on rezone number 22-002, please.
Motion by Ms. Buckholz, second by Ms. Hessel to go into public hearing. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we are,
Can I submit a few more appearance slips?
yes.
At least one more.
First one I have would be
Wait,
from,
let's do the applicant.
yep, first one I have is from the
Oh,
applicant,
okay.
Steve Frenchu.
Mr. Frenchu, if you're present, can you step up to the mic, please?
Yes, I'm Steve Frenchu. I'm the owner of the property. I do have it in an LLC, which is Hathaway Lodge LLC. I went out there and re-looked at property myself. And I have determined that I would only build 2 homes on the 500 feet of frontage. And the reason being is that, I don't know if any of you people went out and looked at the property, but it's a big hill. The center of that hill is like a cliff. So I just decided I wouldn't even think about building more than 2 places there. One on the north side of that hill, one on the south side of the hill. Also, there were some issues about docks. So there would only be 2 docks put in Little Sispagma Lake. I do have something I'd like to pass out to each one of you, if I could. One side, and then I need 2 more. What I have here is I just have zoning maps of the lakes that are right on or near Little Sispagma. So just to the north of Little Sispagma is Big Sispagma Lake, very close to Little Sis. And if you can look at that first map there on what I call page 1, you know, almost other than the cranberry marsh that's there, everything in what I call pink is R1. So basically that whole lake, other than the cranberry marsh, is all R1 zoning. If I go to page 2, that is Little Sispagma Lake. And again, if you look at that zoning map, other than the large parcel that's on the west side of the lake, just about the whole lake is RR1 zoning, except for my piece and my neighbor's piece. The forestry zoning. That forestry zoning was probably applied, way back in probably 1968 or 1970. And that might be when that area there was more of a wilderness area than it is today. There was probably a lot of open land on Little Sister, but it's all there and it's all zoned RR1. And I see no reason why my parcel should not be zoned RR1. If we look at that third page, that's a picture of County Line Lake, which is probably about a 1/2 to 3/4 miles south of Little Sisibagama Lake. And that whole lake, except for what goes into Washburn County, is RR1. So, I mean, and then the last page is another small lake, which is a 1/2 mile south of Little Sisibagama, called Green Lake. All the private ownership of Green Lake is RR1. The south side of that lake is forestry, but that's because, there's, I don't know, maybe 1,000 acres, of which includes that south side of Green Lake is county forest land. So, if you people would go to the zoning office and ask for any lake to look at the RR1 zoning, you're going to find it on every lake in Sawyer County. Typically, Lakeshore is zoned RR1. So
Okay, thank you for that. I have a question on there's about 3.5 acres that are zone of shoreland wetland.
that's on my parcel you already
Yes,
talking about?
It is, yeah.
So that's gonna still stay shoreline wetland, is that?
Yeah, so I had, and this was kind of the one that opened, I guess, my eyes up into what the DNR requires of the shoreline wetland district. So the shoreline wetland district is the underlying zoning district. And if you're actually requesting to change the shoreline wetland district, there's a way more complicated process that's involved with that, where you're basically then requesting the DNR to remove it as a wetland so you can go and fill it in. That's not what the case is here. He's actually requesting to change the overlay, which is the forestry 1. So the overlay would, as per the petition or request we have in front of us, if approved, would go to RR1, but you're not changing the shoreline wetland district. The shoreline wetland district still has, specific setback requirements and use requirements, such as not filling them in.
So will there be anything built on that 3.5 acres of the shoreline wetland?
No, not at all. I can't do it.
What about the docks? Will they be infringing on that?
Not at all.
Okay, so that area that's been designated by the DNR, shoreline wetland, will not be
changed. No, it's not part of the request.
Okay. And then my last question, sir, is you've been doing this for how many years? This
48 years.
48 years and 48. So in 48 years, have you had any violations, citations, infractions by the zoning or DNR?
Not that I ever remember.
Okay, all right. Any other questions for the applicant?
Yeah, I guess I do.
Yep.
So if it were to remain in forestry 1, then you'd be allowed to build 1 home, correct?
Forestry 1, I think, Or you could
one
build
home on Little
5 acres.
Sisabagama, but could also have additional lots split out further to the south. And this was something that I still actually have to go back to the DNR and ask, because our minimum lot widths in forestry require 300 feet of frontage and 5 acres. But if you were to grab 300 feet of frontage on the unnamed lake to the east, do you also then have to grab 300 feet of frontage back onto Little Sisabagama? I don't know if I've ever seen that type of request come back. So I would want to talk to the DNR, and that would be during a time in which a certified survey map was submitted to our office for approval. Because I could see that happening in other cases where you have a water body and a water body. And okay, we meet the minimum frontage on this water body, but now we don't meet the minimum frontage on the other water body. Do you need to meet them on both? And that's a question that I haven't been privy to yet, or it has come up before. So as of right now, I guess my line of thinking is that you would need 300 feet of width along both water bodies and a minimum of 5 acres. With that type of mindset, you would only be allowed one access onto Little Sisabagama, but could have 2 additional lots further to the south that would potentially have access onto that unnamed lake to the east. But again, those are things that I still need to figure out, and those are the things that would come up during a certified survey map review process.
And I might mention that Green Lake Road kind of splits that property in 2. You know, so on the unnamed lake on the east side is a parcel, so to speak. I don't know if it's 5 acres or not. I wouldn't know that until I do a survey. And then I have what's left on the east side where Little Sisabagama Lake is. And then I might just get back to the wetlands real fast. You know, I've been doing this for a long time. I know how to handle dealing with wetlands. I don't want to deal with them. But zoning has got ordinances that cover what I can do. Wisconsin DNR has regulations on what I can do with the wetlands. And the Army Corps of Engineers has regulations on what I can do with wetlands. And you can't do anything with wetlands. And I have no reason to even try to do anything with wetlands. So I just bring that up. And I would just hope that you could look, you know, closely at protecting my rights as far as the use of my property goes. You know, I just want to be the same as most other lakeshore properties are. And that's our R1 zoning.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for the applicant? If not, I will ask if there's anyone who would like to speak in favor of this rezone request. Is there anyone who would like to speak in opposition?
First, I have a Chuck Abrams.
Mr. Abrams?
Good morning.
Please state your name and address.
Yeah, Chuck Abrams, 3340 N Mallard Lane, Stone Lake, Wisconsin, and on Little Sisabagama, right near the property that's in question here. So today, in addition to all the previously noted comments that I'm sure you all had a chance to read over and over again, I'd like to ask the committee to consider at our last meeting on April 22nd, there was a decision to deny an applicant from Lenroot that was right prior to our public hearing. That applicant had brought in maps outlining his proposal to help you all and to assist in countering the opposition that his neighbors had to his development. You sided with the neighbors and denied the request for development in Lenroot, citing the steep terrain and the potential excessive runoff that they were going to have. And they were not near wetlands, it was just regular property. This is all near wetlands. In our case, Mr. French has brought no such maps to details plans. We just heard today, he's talking about potentially only 2 lots, but I'm not sure how you put conditions on a rezone. His only statement of support is that he's been doing this for a number of years and he has a lack of citations. But again, we're all taking his word at that. We've seen no proof of that because he's brought no maps or anything in detail. So those of us who are in opposition have been told to keep our comments to statements of fact about erosion, sensitive areas, public safety, visual appeal, amongst many other things. And we've done that in great detail, citing Sawyer County zoning ordinances and state statutes that establish guidelines to protect these sensitive areas. In essence, the burden of proof has been put on us who oppose the development. But in actuality, Sawyer County zoning rules and bylaws cite that the burden of proof should lie with the applicant. So by that statute, or by that, your bylaws, the applicant has the burden of proof to present evidence to support his request. And that's proof may include, but not limited to, letters from real estate professionals attesting to.
1 minute, Chuck.
Okay. Thank you. Economic impact on the community, his statement supporting the impact of things like noise, light pollution, professional test results for traffic studies, environmental reports, information about development or plans that you can be approved. So in summary, we have a lack of the burden of proof put upon the applicant and put upon all those in opposition. We have overwhelming proof submitted by all the neighbors. We have 100% opposition from all landowners around that property, and the recommendation by the DNR that considers the wetlands in question. So in essence, we think that we've been given plenty of substantial proof why the request should be denied. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I have Linda Zillmer.
Linda Zillmer, 902 Holly Hill Lane, Birchwood, Wisconsin, Edgewater property owner, also the former member of the town plan committee that drafted the town's comprehensive plan, the initial plan commission chair and a commissioner, and also served on the Sawyer County comprehensive plan update. I hope you give me a little leeway because I have to correct a few things that were said. First of all, when this was first heard by this committee, the reason that there were only 4 people voting was that it was just the previous night that 2 new members who had never seen the information.
I'm going to stop right there because I'm not going to give you that privilege. You do not have special privileges on this committee. You're not a member of this committee. So
I'm just asking to
the
correct
public
something.
testimony is going to be specifically information that's pertinent to this hearing on this case, either in
is.
opposition or in support of. So nothing, so you need to keep your comments limited to pertinent information. This is not a time for you to opine on issues that are not germane to this topic.
I am correcting that the reason
That's
2
not
members
in
of this
public
committee didn't vote is
opposition.
they were new. It's
Your
information.
comments need to be in opposition to this rezone case.
It is. I'm setting the record straight that the reason that there was a tie vote was 2 members that were present, Mr. Maestri and Mr. Wingham, the council had advised them not to vote because they were newly appointed, not trained, and had not time to see the information. So I'm just clarifying something that was said at the start of this. The other thing I want to say too is that when the bylaws are very clear, and I can't remember if it's 9.4, that it said that this is supposed to be a rehearing, not just to set it for another public hearing. It says rehearing. So I want that in the record. As far as the Edgewater Comprehensive Plan, I think this version of the staff report did a very good job explaining that at one time, proposed development allowing more than 3 lots that can already be developed was possible under 3 lake classifications or 4. Since the states decided to limit local control of that, you have an either or choice, either 100 foot by 200 square foot lots or 5-acre lots. And it's clear that the Edgewater Comprehensive Plan suggests that this remain low density. And what we have learned, what science has shown, and what time has shown is that overdevelopment of lakeshore impacts water quality, and that also lowers property values. So a home on, or a property on Little Sisabaga right now most likely has a higher premium versus one that's on Lake Chautauqua, which is very green and algae filled, and the second most highly developed lake in Sawyer County, and that's in Edgewater. So I can testify as the Plan Commission Chair that this was intended the way
Okay,
the
thank you.
plan
Your
was
time is up.
drafted, and your plan is that it's low density. Thank you.
Next, I have Gene Alcoa.
Regina Cola, 364N, Parks and Camp Trail, Stone Lake, Wisconsin. I had a presentation together ready for you. Should have been emailed to you with a parcel map that I showed how they would be laid out based on the 100-foot wide. And Mr. French, you did personally tell me one time when I asked him, how many lots do you think you can get on Little Sisabaga? And he said 3, maybe 4. I appreciate the fact that he's talked about changing that maybe to 2, with good reason, obviously, as we believe, but I know that you can't add those conditions to a rezone. So there you are with that. Also, in regards to some of his other comments about other lakes in the area, I was tempted to also supply a aerial satellite photograph of the lakes in our area, including Little Sisabaga. And if you see it from the satellite, you can't even see Big Sisabaga because Big Sisabaga is so green with algae that it's camouflaged amongst the forest that surrounds it. Little Sisabaga, on the other hand, is dark brownish blue, and because it has a clear water, good, very high water quality, which is why it's always been classified in the past as wilderness or class 3. This is what we're trying to protect, folks. So, you know, Big Sisabaga also has a very different terrain than Little Sisabaga. It's very up and down. And this particular plot, as you can see on the topographical map, is extremely steep. The only building areas on Little Sisabaga there is in the north. It's the one that's on the screen there. And the kind of beige colored oval that is kind of in the center towards the top is an inland wetland. So the lots would probably run, you know, from the lake to the right, to the east. And I'm not sure where the roads would go, how emergency services would be able to access, where the drain fields would go. There's just so many things here that, you know, we just need I think you need a better plan or some sort of better idea of what could be done, but this just doesn't look like an appropriate place for 3, even 2 parcels. Imagine all of the runoff off of these impermeable surfaces. Where is that going to go? You know, it's going to go into either the lake or into the wetlands right behind it. So how do you protect that by changing this to R1? So I'd ask you to please just keep it in zoning one. That's the responsible stewardship for our county's resources. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, I have a Jeannie Shanak.
Good morning. I'm Jean Schnack from 333A North Mallard Lane. That's our fire number, but our residence is on a 7-acre island on Little Sis. We built our main structure there in 1993, so we've had it there for we started, no, 1995. So my main objection, I don't know if you have maps of our area, of our lake, and where the area is that Mr. French will be building. We are just around the corner from that bay where we park our cars, and we have docks there. It'd be our family and 2 other families that live on the island, and we go back and forth to the island through a very narrow channel. And so I'm really concerned. We believe that public safety risks dramatically increase if this small wetland bay with narrow channel passage becomes overly congested by adding 4. And right now we have no promises. We have no guarantees that there won't be 4. Is that correct? There could, he's saying 2, but there could be 4. I don't know. New lakefront parcels with 4 or more dock structures along with added boat traffic. Island property owners, family guests, and workers can only access the island properties by boat that are docked at the landing, which is adjacent to the property under review for rezoning. This dangerous increase in bay congestion could likely lead to boating accidents and a reduction in our property values. We back out of those docks, turn around, and then we head through a very narrow channel to get to our island. And there's a lot of people coming and going from those docks because we have guests, we have family, and the other 2 families have the same. So there's a lot of back and forth through that little channel and through that little bay. So that's our concern, is safety, and whether or not there will be 1, 2, or 4 docks that are coming out as we provide them from our landing. Thank you.
Next I have is Thomas Schnack. Jack.
Thank you. Good morning. My name's Tom Schnack. My wife just preceded me. Here we live at our fire number is the North 3338 North Mallard Lane. What I wanted to do is just state we will be going for the opposition petition and change it. That is in works, and we did have 100% of the people properties around it. I also wanted to reiterate the fact that not only do our families go through there, and if you look up, it's really narrow and very shallow. We've had to mark the channels so we can see it reflecting at night, because if we need an emergency exit out of the island, that's where we go. If we need to get out for any reason, a medical reason, that's where our cars are parked. We've had it, we purchased it from Mr. French's family in 1995, and have been good citizens of the lake and of our communities. We really, it's good to hear that there might only be 2 lots, but as Gene stated and both Genes stated, there could be 4 or more. And this is about personal safety. And we've unfortunately had a drowning of 2 people just off to the other side last summer that don't know the circumstances, but that certainly is not what we want to see happen with docks coming off over wetlands, coming out a long way, because those wetlands don't leave much navigable waters. So that's my comments for today. And you can count on the fact that there will be 100% unanimous opposition for the county supervisor's board. Thank you.
I think this
We can ask questions when they're up, can we?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's up to you, I think.
It's up to the chair.
Yeah.
Yes, you are allowed to ask questions, but you're not obligated to answer
Okay.
questions.
All right, thank you for the reminder.
Next I have just registering as opposition Marlo Shields. And that is all of the public hearing slips I have. I don't know if there was anyone online that was wishing to speak.
Anybody else in the room wishing to speak in opposition?
We have one online. Then.
Okay, Mr. Kissinger, you have 3 minutes. Please state your name and address.
Hello, my name is Don Kissinger. I live at 16354 W Legacy Ridge in the town of Edgewater and have a permanent address residence on Little Sissebaugama Lake. And for the prior 60 years, I've been at this lake with our family's cabin that is there. I retired from the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources in August of 2021, where I worked as a regional urban forestry coordinator for the last 29 years of my career and worked with our water regulations and zoning personnel related to building of structures near wetlands. Thus, I have a natural resources background. I am opposed to the rezoning application submitted by Mr. French, specifically in reference to several of the finding of fact issues that you, the zoning committee, must consider. They are, the first one is, will the zoning change be detrimental to the ecology, wildlife, and shorelands area? Yes. If as proposed and changed from forestry to residential recreation, and the full length of the shoreline is allowed to be platted at its maximum use, it appears 4 lots may be allowed. Trying to shoehorn homes within the confines of most of these lots would necessitate major alterations to the land and adversely affect the 2 wetlands present, the larger one that's contiguous to the lake and the smaller perched one that has many slopes around it, thus the water quality, ecology, and wildlife use of that portion of the lake. Secondly, will it create air quality, water supply, or pollution problems? Very likely. Pollution problems may occur if vegetation is removed above the wetlands, slopes increased, and fill is used to allow for the building, as a resulting sedimentation would choke out both the upland and wetland plants that act as the lake's kidneys to cleanse the runoff. Lastly, will it create topographical problems such as runoff, drainage, erosion, flooding, or the removal of vegetative cover? It definitely will, if the maximum allowable lake lots built on is 4. In order to meet all setback requirements, such as from the town road, adjacent lots, distance to the lake's normal high water mark, distance to the freestanding wetland that I mentioned, distance from well placement, as well as septic systems. In order to accommodate all of these very valid requirements, to build a home on each lot, there would need to be a substantial amount of grade change, thus cutting and filling of the current slope, excessive vegetation removal resulting in increased runoff, erosion and sedimentation entering the lake, adversely affecting the microorganisms such as zooplankton, phytoplankton, amphibians, and fish. In closing, this is a parcel of property where more than half the shoreline is a wetland, another perched wetland, substantial slopes, and a town road nearby, where ecologically speaking should only accommodate 1 buildable lot, not 4. Thank you for your time and listening to me.
Okay, thank you. Okay, if there's no more public comments, need a motion. Go ahead.
Gene Aquila.
Steve Panovich, I think.
Yeah, Steve, go ahead. You have 3 minutes.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. My name is Stephen Panovich. I live at 3634 N Boxing Camp Trail, Stone Lake, Wisconsin on Little Sisibagama. I am also a permanent resident on Little Sisibagama. And I just want to make note that these are concerned citizens of Little Sisibagama Lake, many of whom have long family histories on the lake. And they understand the value of conservation, protection of fragile environments, and preservation for future generations. Through research, they have pointed out findings of fact that point to the denial of the rezoning request. These are not selfish claims. They know the terrain, the shoreline, and the wetland that we're talking about changing. They're not against development, but they are rightfully concerned about the impact that cutting trees, reshaping hillsides, grading roads, and home construction on several 100-foot lots would have on the water quality, fish and wildlife habitat, as well as the recreational use and standard of living for those with properties on the lake. I would also like to say that we've worked with the applicant in the past, as we own one of his homes that he has developed. And we have seen something on Boxing Camp Trail that I'd like to point out, and also on another location on Little Sisibagama. He has circumvented the intent of ordinances by doing such things as building driveways over septic drain fields, and by putting a septic drain field of 1 parcel on the neighboring parcel, and then selling that parcel with an easement for the drain field. He did this on Boxing Camp Trail. So I'm concerned as to how he would fit these 2 lots. I'm happy to hear him say that he has changed his idea of going down to 2 lots. Other than that, I would ask you to apply your own zoning committee guidelines for approval or denial of this rezone by concluding that, yes, it would, 1, damage property values, 2, be detrimental to ecology, wildlife, wetlands, and shorelands, 3, create topographical problems such as runoff, drainage, erosion, and vegetative cover removal, 4, create a water supply or pollution problem, and 5, create traffic access problems. I think all of these matters were addressed by previous persons who have spoken and written to you today. So I'm in agreement with Alice Kissinger, who says, please consider the pitfalls mentioned and deny the request for a rezone. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Just a question.
Yeah.
This was approved by the town's
Yes.
company. Thank you.
Yes.
This is a public lake, it's not private, there's a boat landing, correct?
There's not.
Do you access it through another lake for
You
recreational?
do not. No, it is a private lake. There's a
Okay.
private boat landing that I believe the majority of people use in order to put boats in, but there is no public launch on this lake.
Okay, any more public comments? Hearing none, need a motion to come out of public.
I'll make that motion, Mr. Chairman.
Motion by Mr. Buckhold, second by Mr. Schuman, to come out of public hearing. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
This is the discussion action for the remanding back to zoning committee for rezone number 22-002 in the town of Edgewater. Owner Hathaway Lodge LLC. Legal description is previously read into record. The request is to rezone 18.9 total acres of forestry 1 to RR1. The 3.47 acres of shoreline wetland are not to be affected in this rezone.
All right, committee, we've read a ton of opinion letters. We've heard a lot of public comments. And I think we all have done our own independent research on this as well. So
I'll make a motion that we approve the request. Number 8 would be consistent with the town and county comprehensive plan, would be compatible with the surrounding uses of the area. And I think individual property rights is something we have to take very seriously. It sounds to me like he's looking to make it compatible around the lake. So I make the motion to approve.
okay, we have a motion by Mr. Regenheimer to approve the rezone request with the as stated. We have a second by Ms. Hessel. Any further discussion?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I believe, I don't know if you guys are reading what these opposition letters are saying about their property on this rezone. I'm against it, so I just think there wasn't enough consideration taken in on the letters.
Excuse me, can I ask a question?
We're in discussion. Yeah.
Can you clarify, do you mean that we didn't take enough consideration or the town didn't take enough
Well,
consideration?
I'm saying the town and this committee, because you guys are approving it. And I know you approved it last time. And I believe Mr. Ringheimer or somebody approved it. and-
He couldn't vote because he
Oh,
was
he didn't vote, or then it must have been Mr. Betcher. But anyway, I just don't think that we're listening to the landowners around this lake. I mean, they've been there, they know what goes on there. And like I say, I'm against it, but you guys do what you think is right.
And I respect your opinion on that. I do think that because they had to go get they had to go get zoning to build on there originally, like especially the island owners. They definitely had to go through zoning. So I feel like everybody should have that same respect. And maybe their neighbors opposed it, but they still built. And it shouldn't be what's good for me, but not for anybody else. I just think that there should be the personal. And if he can't ruin the wetlands based on the ordinances in place. So we have to look at those facts. We have to put facts over feelings. I know the feelings are presented quite often, but the facts sometimes are not. I know that facts in opposition are, but the facts of the law are not always presented. So that's what I want to stand firm on.
Yeah, well, that's fine, but this gentleman didn't prove any facts. He didn't show any facts to
The
anybody.
facts are in the laws and ordinances of the towns and the DNR.
So you're going off just our facts, not the people's facts.
I am definitely respecting our zoning committee.
Oh, exactly. Yeah, I agree with that part of it. But what I'm saying is when it comes to facts to present before this committee, this gentleman didn't give us any. He didn't prove any, show us anything that would not be hurt the land or the zoning thing. So, I mean, I'm not trying to get into an argument over it.
No, we're just having a discussion.
Discussion.
Because this is, I mean, this is an important decision that obviously there's a lot of, I mean, it's contentious. And I mean, the one thing I will disagree with you, Mr. Buckles, is I think we are strongly taking in the opinion letters of the neighbors into consideration. I mean, very much so. We've gotten a lot of them, and we can't ignore those. But if they are opinion letters, they're not fact letters, first of all. And another thing, kind of what Ms. Hessel brought up is, you know, we've heard of all of these neighbors who are, they're landowners who have homes and lots in RR1 lots around this same lake. I've heard comments that we have lots of family, lots of guests. We have a long family history on the lake. But we're not being selfish, but we don't want anybody else moving here. So I'm hearing people that have this great house on this great lake, and they just, it almost sounds like there's a lot of emotion, and they don't want the new kids moving in to the empty lot. And I understand that, but I don't know if that overrides the facts. And it's been brought up that the burden of proof lies with the applicant, and it absolutely does. And I'm aware of that. And the applicant, in my opinion, has done well, not my opinion, the fact is he's done every single thing required of him to do to meet this request. So if we remove as much emotion as we can and look at the facts, and if you want to talk about precedents, he's been doing this for 48 years. And we heard one complaint of an alleged driveway over a drain field, but there's been no citations issued and no infractions on record. So that's what I'm going off of. So it's good discussion, and
Chairman, I got a comment.
yes, please.
Jay, so obviously this rezone would go to the full county board then for final approval?
It
correct?
would,
And what
yes.
is this petition they're talking about? What is that
Similar,
about?
yeah, so under the Wisconsin State Statutes 5969 sub 5 sub, let me make sure I get it right. Sub 5 sub E sub 5G. If the abutting landowners in excess of 50% submit a petition to the clerk 24 hours before the matter is to be heard by the county board, that the county board then has to have a 3/4 majority vote in order to adopt or therefore approve the zone district change. They did submit that for the last one. Ultimately, it wasn't brought up because we ended up remanding it back to zoning committee. I'd be pretty assured that you will be having a petition again when this comes to county board that would require a 3/4 majority vote. There's a few other things I'd like to discuss prior to the vote here, unless you had additional questions.
Well, I guess I just wanted, Mr. Phillips, are you still on?
Yes, sorry, I was on mute. Yes, I am.
Yeah, okay. Well, we have other things that come from committees to the full county board for decisions, and sometimes they come to us without a recommendation. So it's the county board's prerogative that we either discuss them, make action on them, or that we remand them back to committee, correct?
Yes, in that circumstance, the thing, Mr. Chair, is that in 59.69, the zoning statute, there is a particular process as it relates to amendment to the zoning code. and it requires either a recommendation of approval or denial coming out of the zoning committee, which is charged with the responsibility for making that recommendation. So it's a little different than your normal committee process.
So
That's the only thing I'm saying.
So Andy, that's unique to the zoning.
It
committee.
is, yes. And you've adopted, the zoning committee has adopted bylaws to effectuate that statutory responsibility.
Thank you. That's it.
Yeah, and other additional comments that I would like to make, this isn't an easy job for you committee members. I understand that, and I appreciate your civic duty to the county for being on this committee. One of the comments that was brought up that I just want to address, if this was to be rezoned and went through the ratification process, there would not be the ability to condition it that it would only be for 2 lots. That may be the applicant's, statements here and, potential forward thinking on it, but that would not be anything that you could ever hold to a condition. Once it is rezoned, the minimum zone district standards would kick in, which are 100 feet in width, 200 feet in depth. So I do want to make that clear. And I think that was it.
Mr. Chair, I just want to bring up one more. I appreciate what you and Ms. Hessel telling me, but I am not against people doing what they want to do with their property. I take a look, when I read this, I take a look at everything. But I just wanted to put that out there, and I thank you guys for your input to my stuff. So, like I say, I'm not against people doing what want to build on their own property.
I do remember the one other thing I wanted to state is that, when this initially went to the town board back in February, the town didn't have even, 7/8 of the information that we had gotten from adjacent property owners. So they did not take any of that information into play when they made their initial motion. We received a lot of this over the 2 consecutive times this has now been back at zoning committee.
Andy, did you have a comment?
I do not know.
Okay, we just heard you clear your throat. Okay, yeah, so a lot of information to digest, and we have the recommendation from the town, and we are going to we're going to end up voting, and however that goes, we're going to give that recommendation to the full board, and they're going to do with it, what they will. And if it requires a 3/4 vote, well, that's 12 people. But I don't want that to affect how we vote here today. Just like it didn't affect the town's vote, how they thought the zoning committee might vote. We have to take the information as we see it and process it and come to what we think is the best decision based on the information that we have. We have a lot of information. So if there's any further, or is there any other discussion?
If I may, Mr. Chair, this is Andy. I would like to talk just briefly. I cannot emphasize enough what you just said, that this committee does not take any sort of petition or potential petition into consideration. That's a matter for the county board. And so it's incumbent upon this committee to make a recommendation to the county board without regard to what may or may not happen procedurally before the board. I think that's a very important point.
Yeah, Mr. Stewart,
Can you read the motion back then, please?
can you,
Okay, motion by John Rickhammer to approve the application that it would be consistent with the town and or county comprehensive plan. And then I was gonna have to look up the other one because it was very fast. Sorry.
That's what I could read it myself.
Thank you.
Be compatible with the surrounding uses in the area.
Oh, the area.
And I
Oh,
mentioned individual property rights. I'm not sure if that's applicable.
we had a second by Ms. Hessel.
Hessel, yes.
Any further discussion? If not, we're going to need a roll call vote. Kathy?
Yeah. Okay, Tweed Schuman,
No.
Stacy Hessel,
Yes.
Ron Buckholz,
No.
John Rickhammer,
Yes.
Jesse Betcher.
Yes.
It's approved, 3-2.
So I request a 10-minute recess.
Yeah, let's take let's return at exactly 10 p.m.
10 a.m. I
I
don't wanna be here that long.
Correction for the record, 10 a.m.
Some of the meetings feel like.
Yeah.
All right, we're back in session, and we'll move on to agenda item number 4.
Yes. Conditional use permit is public hearing in the town of Round Lake. Conditional use permit number 22-020. Owner White Stag Real Estate LLC, Jeff and Michelle DeYoung, part of the Southwest One Quarter, the Southwest One Quarter, Section 12, Township 41 North, Range 8 West, Parcel 024-841-123301, 29.91 total acres, zoned agricultural 2 and commercial 1. Permit is desired for an event barn per section 17.5, parent B, parent 15 of the Sawyer County zoning ordinance to have occasional events such as graduations, weddings, and small parties. As per my staff report, again, the permit is desired for an event barn. As per the applicant's statements, they are requesting this for the event barn on the property as legally just described. Back in 2017, a similar request for an event barn at this location was requested, but was withdrawn prior to the zoning committee hearing. The reasons for the withdrawal back in 2017 is that event barns was not specifically listed as part of the CUP process within the A2 zone district. That has since changed, and now with approval of a CUP, an event barn can occur within the A2 zone district. Also, since 2017, we have seen the passing of Act 67, which specifically addresses substantial evidence. If an application for a conditional use permit meets or agrees to meet all the requirements and conditions specified in the county ordinance or those imposed by the county zoning board, the county shall grant a conditional use permit. Any conditions must be imposed must be related to the purpose of the ordinance and based on substantial evidence. The applicants are requesting to utilize an existing barn on the property with additional space to be provided for outdoors for tent area from a preferred vendor. The other plans of operations and owner applicant submitted conditions are attached as a separate document, as well as included later in the staff report. Also see the additional maps in the packet as far as the proposed event barn layout, outdoor tent area, parking area, garbage area, and restrooms area. I do want to go through those potential conditions as part of my staff report, that it be operational May through October, that all functions must cease by 11 p.m. and start no earlier than 10 a.m. We did list a separate one in there, that indoor rental for smaller groups and private parties less than 50 people may occasionally occur before 10 a.m. for breakfast. In discussion with the applicant, they sometimes have, whether it be for a wedding shower or a baby shower, or a group of fishermen that they may want to eat some breakfast in there at 9 o'clock. So we had added that in there. That no motorhomes, RVs, trailers, or tents would be permitted at the White Stag grounds. That all trash must be bagged and put in covered trash receptacles. Trash is then removed and put into large dumpsters at the tavern at White Stag. That meals and foods is prepared and served by licensed caterers. That beer, wine, and liquor sales requires town approval license and served by certified bartenders. That parking to remain entirely on the property, that no town road parking is allowed. There is a larger parking lot on the grounds. That adequate number of portable restrooms and garbage receptacles will be provided per the event according to industry standards. That the capacity not exceed 300 people per any event. That the conditional use permit is valid only for the current owner. That any new ownership would require renewal of the existing CUP. And that it must meet all other federal, state, county, and potential town laws and ordinance included but not limited to state licensing and permitting for event barns. As per motion by the town board, motion was approved. Ralph Hanson, Chairman, Virginia Chaybeck, Supervisor, James Stradlin, Supervisor, Kay Wilson, Supervisor, Donald Stover, Supervisor. They have a very large list of conditions and findings of facts, which I will go over. Conditions, operation May through October, all functions cease at 11 p.m. and start no earlier than 10 a.m. Indoor rental for group less than 50 people may occur before 10 a.m. Number 2, that space available next to the barn for the outdoor tent area from preferred vendors is allowed. Number 3, no motor homes, RV trailers, or the likes are permitted at White Stag, that all trash must be bagged and put in proper receptacles and then removed and put into larger dumpsters at the tavern at White Stag. No fireworks or outdoor amplified music is allowed. So I'm going to go specifically over the ones that differ from my staff report and potential conditions as to what the town also had listed as their conditions. They did add that no fireworks or outdoor amplified music is allowed. Meals, food is prepared and served by licensed caterers. Beer, wine, and liquor requires town approval license and served by certified bartenders. The parking is to remain entirely on the property, no town road parking. Adequate number of portable restrooms and garbage receptacles will be provided. Capacity not to exceed 200 people. That is different than, 300. Gotcha. That is different than my staff report. Conditional use permit valid for only the current owner. New owner require renewal of the cup. Must have all necessary state license and permits for the event barn. The conditional use permit will be revisited and reviewed in November of 2022. They put that as a condition. The findings of facts that is not detrimental to ecology, wildlife, wetlands, and shorelands. It would not create air quality, water supply, or pollution problem. It would not destroy prime agricultural farmlands. So let me go over again as to what the different conditions as specified by the town were different than what I have listed in my staff report. Specifically, no fireworks or outdoor amplified music is allowed, that the capacity not to exceed 200 people, and that the conditional use permit would be revisited and reviewed in November of 2022. I don't know how that specifically works. I don't know if they wanted to review it at the town level, or if this committee wanted to set some type of condition that they want to review it or rehear it. I might have to go out to Andy Phillips on something like that. But there were 15 opinion letters sent out. 5 were returned, and those were sent to the committee members. Committee, did you have a chance to review those responses?
Yes.
That is all.
Jay and Mr. Chair, if I could just ask a quick question, because he brings up a good point on these conditions. As I understand it, these are recommended conditions by the town, correct? They don't have a separate ordinance that gives them the right to grant those, to create those conditions, right?
That is correct.
So, and to your point, Jay, how does this work? Whatever conditions this committee imposes is how it's going to work. And so we can take the town's recommendation, you can disregard, you can modify, it's whatever conditions you believe are appropriate.
Thank you.
Okay, so we need a motion to go into public hearing. So moved. Motion by Mr. Buckholz, second by Ms. Hessel to go into public hearing. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, do we have the applicant, Jeff or Michelle DeYoung, or a representative? Yes, ma'am.
I'm Michelle DeYoung, owner of White Stag Real Estate and White Stag Hospitality. I think everything's laid out pretty good here. The only thing I want to add is this is not like a primary business for us. We have the farm, which we have kind of brought back to life. We've planted over 600 fruit and apple trees, a lot of vegetables and stuff that we use at the farm or at the restaurant. We have a trail that runs, we bought all the property between the farm and the restaurant. We are not going to do anything with it. We bought it to protect the farm and the restaurant so that nobody ever builds on it. We also bought land behind the farm. So we actually have about 60 acres that we're not going to develop or do anything with except for farm. And we have a pole shed, but that's all commercial on that end down there. So just with our business at the farm and the restaurant, we wanted to be able to do private dinners in our barn. That would work both with the farming products that we produce and then the restaurant. Our restaurant's pretty small. We can't handle big parties there. So we've had a lot of requests to do that. And so then you get groom's dinners, graduation parties, all that stuff. The barn is off Twin Lakes Road and down a hill a little bit. There is a tree barrier there. So the only question I have, and we're happy to comply with the recommendations that the town made, 200 people to me is not an issue. The only thing would be the amplified music. I just question that because I think we should have to follow the city ordinance on that. Just like Twin Lakes Tap has amplified music outside, which we can hear in our farm when we're all working every day. So I just think that following the city ordinance would be the right call on that. So that'd be the only change from the town that I'm requesting.
I have a question about parking. It seems to be an issue. Do you have adequate space on your property, not on the town road, but on your property to fit 100 vehicles?
Absolutely. I have a concern with the parking that's occurring on Twin Lake Road. It's a very dangerous intersection. It's a whole other topic. We would not allow people to park anywhere but on our property. We have 60 acres, but we did level and gravel a very large area that we can park at least 100 cars. And if we need to, we have a whole other, yard between the barn and another building that we can park on. So
Do you have running water there and restroom facilities?
we do. We have, we modified the farmhouse to have 3 commercial or, commercial restrooms in it. But we also would bring in porta potties based on the number of people. So if you have a party of 50, we still would probably bring in a porta potty and then still allow to use the restrooms in the building next door.
Stacy, go ahead.
So one of the letters of concern was Bethel Road. Where are you accessing the event? Do they have to go through Bethel Road or can you go anywhere?
So that was the other thing. We're the first driveway off of the highway. So we're not encouraging traffic down Twin Lakes Road. We're happy to have a main entrance wherever. If someone wants to make a recommendation, that's fine. But I feel Twin Lakes, the first driveway would be the best. There is a lot of traffic on Twin Lakes Road. A lot of cars speed up and down. It's very frustrating to us. And we're going to install a gate over on the Bethel Road side. But if people prefer they use that entrance, we're fine accommodating that, whatever works.
So you're saying they wouldn't access this barn area, or they would access it right off Twin Lakes, the first left, like going into the restaurant, correct?
Nope, right where the arrow is, that goes right up to the building in the back, and it goes all the way around to Bethel. So there's like a complete circle there.
Driveway right here.
Yep.
So you go past the event barn to the parking area.
Yep.
That might be something that this committee wants to discuss as far as if there was, issues of traffic concern, that you could make it a condition that the event barn would be using that access off of Twin Lakes Road versus Bethel. I've been down that road many times, and you probably have a better line of sight down on the Twin Lakes Road than you do at the top of Bethel, because it is a little bit of a blind hill there.
So you're not going to access the event barn then from your restaurant parking lot?
Nope.
Correct?
Maybe someday.
Yeah. I
Maybe
see what you mean.
someday. We have a trail. You can kind of see.
Because I think, don't you agree it'd be safer if you access your barn off Twin Lakes versus?
There's a trail there, but
Yeah,
I'll go back.
but that's not conditional to this.
and not only that, that parking lot isn't big enough. We have our employees, we cleared an area for our employees to park. And so when we're sold out, we fill our parking lot.
Sure.
So it just.
You have to leave it open. It's a open meeting.
And that whole intersection is an issue. I mean, it's not.
Yeah.
So.
You're cresting a hill further.
And it
east
sits
of
at
that,
a
right?
weird angle.
Yep.
That's why, to me, Bethel Road is a better, clear spot for people to turn. I don't like pulling out of the driveway right there because cars come flying down the road.
Sure. And you're okay with all the town's recommendations except the amplified music?
I just question that because the city already has a sound ordinance. Anybody in their yard can play music up until a certain time. And Twin Lakes Tap is always playing music. Doesn't bother me. I like listening to it, but I just wonder why they would give us that special.
And why would they restrict you on the fireworks?
I
Was
think
that just a
that's
town or was
I
that?
think you can do it by permission, or is what it should say if you have a permit, but
Yeah.
I guess it's just not a part of our plan to be lighting fireworks. I don't want to be responsible for that.
I believe you have to get a permit from your township to do fireworks.
You do.
Yes.
Okay.
So again, why that is even in there, because you would have to, because I remember when I was reading the history of the McCormick House, there's a big issue with that, and they had to get a permit to do fireworks. So, and again, that's kind of redundant to have that in there, because the city already has ordinances on that.
So the music, is that just a stereo speakers you're concerned about, or were you looking to have like a live band performing outside?
Possibly a live band. We hope to do, and we did last fall, we had a party just and invited people to come see the barn, and it was just, we cooked some food and did a little thing, and we had a one-man musician inside the building. Nobody ever said anything about it, but we're allowed to do that stuff anyways with Egg too, if we wanted to sell our pumpkins and our apples, and I've seen a reason why we can't have music out there, and we already have a liquor license. It's all contiguous property with everything that we own there.
The liquor license doesn't apply for just the commercial property?
It applies to everything.
That would be on the town. I don't know that.
And there was a little confusion in 2017, so by everybody, there just wasn't quite understood, what boundaries were, so we pulled it and just thought, let's make friends before we make enemies, and then this was passed to include it, so we got it reapplied.
All right, thank you. Any other questions for the applicant? If not, is there anyone who would like to speak in favor of this conditional use permit?
I just think it's great to have another place for events. We don't have a lot of places in town for events, so I encourage it.
So we were emailed a few letters.
Is the hand up as well?
Oh, to speak in favor?
Well, that's where we're at, right?
Yeah. Is there someone online who would like to speak in favor of this CUP?
Yes, this is Ginny Chabek, 10363N McLean Road. I am a board member in the town of Round Lake, but I'm representing myself today.
Okay.
I'm in support of this. The thing that I want to encourage the committee to consider is that this particular area, a lot of the neighbors are concerned. They have their worries about this, but I believe that we need to give the DeYoungs a chance. They are, it's not in their best interest to be at odds with their neighbors. And the reason why we put that condition of revisiting it in the fall is that would be when the season was over, and we could collect feedback and have another session with our town and with the DeYoungs. I don't know what the legal pathway is there to make changes. I would certainly like to hear what Andy thinks about that, but it's important to the town that stay with the CUP. That's all.
Okay, thank you for your comments. All right, anyone else speaking in favor? Like I was saying before, we've all read the letters that were emailed, so we're not going to read those again into the record. But if anybody here would like to speak in opposition to the CUP.
First I have is Mick Bruce.
Yes, good morning. My name is Michael Bruce, 12629 W Twin Lake Road. I am right across from the properties that adjoin both the event barn and White Stag itself. On that, a couple of the issues this morning that I heard, when my first submission to the town of Round Lake and to the zoning on this, the background information was not available that Michelle DeYoung had presented, and that we got to hear later. So some of my comments were fairly general at the time. A couple of the things that I heard today, one of them was point number 4 is about the moving of the trash from whatever the event happens to be. The original proposition in 2017 was for 75 folks. Now we, of course, original was up to 300 and the town of Round Lake came back down to 200. This is basically a residential neighborhood. The two businesses that get referred to, of course, are Round Lake Tap and of course the White Stag itself, which are at the beginning of Twin Lake Road. And both of those businesses exit directly onto Highway 77, plus they have exits also onto the beginning of Round Lake, or the road, Twin Lake Road. So the traffic on Twin Lake Road doesn't affect folks further down. This is going to be a different story coming out, whether this is the first time I've heard that the DeYoungs are planning to exit onto Twin Lake Road from Bethel, because currently that's where the access to the barn is off of Bethel Road. One of the things, point 4 was that does concern me a little bit, is they're going to be moving the trash from whatever event happens at the event barn, and they're going to be moving it up to White Stag at the end, which means they're going to be taking trash. And if you have trash from 200 people from how many ever hours that happens to be, it's going to be quite a bit. And how do they propose to keep that trash from something happening, a spill, for instance, coming up, and then we as neighbors have to deal with whatever happens on that. That becomes an issue, I think. And you know, the last point I think that I wanted to bring up a little bit was the fact is, you know, that it's a nice issue that the town of Round Lake is going to revisit whatever happens after the first year. But who is going to stand up and say they're already there, they're invested in the property, and they have been running, and if it doesn't seem to be compatible with a completely, you know, residential neighborhood,
You have 10 seconds.
who is going to be able to come back and say, we don't want to do that more? I would think that would be difficult. Thank you for your consideration.
Next I have Alan Rudd.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, committee members. I was going to read the letter.
Can you
that
say
I-
your name, please?
Alan Rudd.
Okay, thank you.
Your address?
I'm at 11225 North Songbird Lane, Hayward. That's just on the north shore of Round Lake there. I was going to read the letter, but you had mentioned, Mr. Chairman, that you guys have already read it, so I'll save you the time on that and just go to 3 points I wanted to make. This, I understand why somebody might think this would be a good idea, but when you consider this thing, you're talking 200 people in this event with live music and alcohol. There's going to be a lot of noise in our neighborhood up there. That's just a fact. There's going to be a lot of noise. The second concern I had was the traffic in the cars. And you've talked on this a little bit, but you know, you take 100 cars or 125 cars coming and going, and if they do come off of Bethel or Twin Lake, depending where it's at, that's a lot of movement at 11 o'clock at night. And it was mentioned that they want to park all the cars on the property and what have you, but who's going to police that and make sure that the cars don't end up on Twin Lake or wherever? You know, we all know what happened. One thing I was going to say, excuse me, I'm a little nervous on this, but this isn't a church deal where we got a church and what have you for an event. It's not a senior citizen event structure where seniors come in and do their activities. This is specifically designed to do weddings and parties, birthday parties, alcohol, and you've got a certain group that go to those venues. We all know who they are. They drink a lot and what have you. I'm concerned what those people might do. Picture this, you know, 11 o'clock at night. It's not if it's going to happen, it'll be just when it happens. But I'm not looking forward to somebody taking a right turn instead of a left turn, end up in my driveway, come into the cabin, they wake me up, they wake my wife up, they wake my dogs up, they wake my neighbors up, turn around, maybe back over the yard or whatever to leave. I'm just saying that when you consider there's some definite negatives to this, if we go forward with it. If you approve it, basically 2 people win, and I have nothing against the DeYoungs. I mean, nothing whatsoever, but I'm just saying 2 people benefit by this. If you approve it, the the rest of the neighborhood pays the price for it. And in closing, the last thing I would say too is if roles were reversed and I was the committee and you were the residents, if you were to go home tonight and dig in your mailbox and open a letter that says, oh, by the way, we're gonna put an event barn right next to your house. If you were talking to me, how would you want me to vote on that?
Thank you, sir. Your time is up.
Next, I wish to speak in opposition, Judy Sherrill.
Morning. Thank you for the opportunity to present our comments today.
Can you state your name and
My
address?
name is Judy Sherrill. For 37 years, our family's address has been 12547 West Twin Lake Road, which is directly across the property from the DeYoungs, from the White Stag event barn. Yesterday, out of curiosity, I timed myself from my door to my mailbox. It took me about 90 seconds to get there by foot, just walking. And from that spot, visually, I could tell it was about the same distance. If I wanted to go from my mailbox to the door of the event barn, would be about that same time. So that's about how close the residences are, very close. And I would say there are about 8 others in that area who would, it would be about that same amount of time for them to do the same. The commonality that those of us who choose to live in this quiet, rural, residential area is the peacefulness it brings to our lives. The adage, there's a place for everything and everything in its place, applies to the discussion today. Our tranquil neighborhood of 30+ residences is not the place for an event barn or the use of an outdoor tent for entertainment purposes. From attending various sizes events of gatherings as those proposed, we have witnessed the volume level of people's voices in visiting increases. Microphones are needed to address those gathered. The addition of music sound systems and the consumption of alcohol exasperates the noise level. It's just the nature of when people gather. Unfortunately, noise does not stop at property boundaries or the lake shore. For 6 months of the year, on event days and nights, which may be operating for 13 hours, our lives will be changed. Neighboring families will be adjusting to what we do and where we do it on our own properties. Also worth noting is that the location of the newly built event barn is on a part of the White Stag property that is closest to existing residential neighborhoods, rather than further back on their property, which would have provided a more neighborly natural buffer. Increased traffic adds noise and safety issues. And I was going to address the rise in the road, which does
Your
block
time is
view.
nearly up. You have about 10
All right.
seconds.
We are a neighborhood of families who have invested in living in a rural, peaceful place. We welcome the DeYoungs and wish them well. However, our neighborhood is not the place for an event barn. The county sent a letter to 35 or to people within 300 feet. However, we know
Okay, ma'am.
that the impact will reach beyond that.
All right, your time is up. Thank you.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.
And that is all that I have for my public hearing slips, but I believe there's a hand online for Martin Hanson.
Go ahead, Mr. Hanson.
Thank you. My name's Martin Hanson, 11078N Robin Lane, speaking against approval of the CUP. I'd like to make it clear that at the last Town of Round Lake Board meeting, I was appointed to the Planning Commission. However, I was not on the commission when they took up this matter. And today I'm speaking not as a Planning Commission member, but as myself. I previously submitted written comments on the conditions. I hope those are taken to heart in your deliberation. The two things that I want to speak to represent the preservation or potential adverse impact to the rural and quiet, peaceful residential neighborhoods surrounding the site. Number one is access. From a traffic engineering standpoint, I believe access off Twin Lake Road provides a better access because of the site distance problem at Bethel Road and Twin Lakes Road intersection. It would also keep potential misdirected traffic out of the Bethel Road neighborhood. My second point addresses potential noise and number of events. If the CUP is approved, there's nothing to prohibit an event from occurring every day during the stated operation period, which would greatly extend the commercial area from the intersection of Twin Lakes Road and Highway 77 down further to the east on Twin Lakes Road with traffic and noise. So I appreciate the opportunity to comment, and thank you.
Okay, thank you. If there's no more comments, I have another question for you, ma'am. Yes.
And I'm hoping I can clarify.
Yeah, go ahead, step up to the microphone.
Clarify what I'm clarifying with.
Maybe, because it might answer
Okay.
my question.
All right. I'm.
You
I'm
state your
feel-
name, just so
Oh,
we can-
Michelle DeYoung.
Thanks.
I'm feeling that people are misunderstanding exactly which building it is. The newest building is the big one that we keep our equipment in for farming. We have tractors and such, right near Bethel Road. So the original entrance to the barn is off of Twin Lake Road. And that is pushed back on the edge of a hill. So it does slope down that way. So there is a buffer and you can't see it from Twin Lake Road. So I just want to make sure everyone is aware of that. So
My question is, you might not be able to give an exact number, but how many events would you anticipate having per season?
yeah, and I was gonna bring that up. I'm fine with somebody putting a number on it. This isn't a primary business. It's, you don't
Right, so if
know.
there's no number put on it, what would you anticipate? Is this like a every weekend thing or a once a month thing, or what's your, I know it's just a guess. I'm
Yep,
asking
so paid events, I'm guessing 4 to 5,
4 or 5 per season,
over from May to
so
October.
about 1 per month.
Yep,
Okay.
but however, we want to still with our farming environment, we would like to have apple picking and pumpkin sales and things like that in the fall.
Okay.
So that's going to be like the first week of September, or excuse me, the middle of August through October probably, that we'll have probably next year, some farming stuff happening.
Okay, so the events sound more like family oriented as opposed to, Lollapalooza type.
We're not
spring
We're not
break, so-
partiers and late night people with loud music. We put 11 o'clock on it for a reason. We're limiting what kind of people are coming in. We're responsible, respectful people. And that's why I have no problem with them reevaluating or reissuing a permit next year based upon what happens this year. I don't think it's fair when, to not be able to at least prove ourselves and what we're doing. I have someone who wants to do a Christmas party because the family can't get together and they don't have any place to congregate. We have a table that seats 20 people, and we have a fireplace in there and Restoration Hardware furniture. It's beautiful. It's nice. It's not a dive bar. So.
Okay, thank you, I appreciate that.
Mhm.
All right, if there's no more public comments, need a motion to come out of public hearing. Ms. Hessel has made a motion to come out of public hearing, second by Mr. Buckholz. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
This is the discussion action for Town Around Lake conditional use permit number 22-020, owner White Stag Real Estate LLC. Legal description is previously read into record. Request is for an event barn, subject to section 17.5, parent B, parent 15. Be it that we're in discussion, if the committee so chooses to approve the application, I think we really need to focus in on these, potential conditions. There's some differencing from, my list of possible conditions versus what the town board wanted to see versus some other potential issues that we heard during public comment. I think one of the big ones that you'd want to look at, not only the capacity one, that was one that had varied and was a little bit different. The fireworks one, I think I had that originally in mind, and I think that might have been something that was actually described as a potential condition from the applicant. I think that's something you probably want to talk about, because that is a condition you could put on as a committee, even though you still have to get, town permits to, blow off fireworks. I've been to an event barn where they did a fireworks send off. And if that's something that, the committee wants to, not touch and just allow them to do that, they certainly can, but it's something you probably want to discuss. Amplified music outdoors, you're certainly going to want to discuss. And then the driveway access is do we want people coming off of Bethel or just off of Twin Lakes Road? I think you want to certainly discuss that. And also whether or not you want to, rehear this. I was, hypothetically thinking during the some of the comments there, where if you condition that this needs to be renewed at a certain time frame, we could put that on the condition, which would require a renewal of a conditional use permit, similarly to how gravel pits are renewed every 3 years. If this committee puts a condition that renewal needs to be done at a certain date, we can certainly do that, but that also opens up the door for the applicant to potentially change some of the conditions that, hey, we do want to throw off fireworks, or hey, we're flirting with that 200 number of guests. We'd really like to be at 250. It may be not a bad idea. I don't know if November of this year is the right date for that. We're halfway through the summer already. I don't know how many events they have planned out potentially for the rest of the season, but I would look at potentially extending that to maybe summer of next year and reevaluate. That would potentially, though, come with additional publication notices, rehearings, so it would be up to this committee as well as, would they be required additional fees to hear that as a renewal? So that's all I have.
So before we get a motion on this, I think we need to discuss that being revisited in November of this year. So under normal circumstances, the ground pits, I think it's 5 years, right? They have 5
It is now,
years
yeah.
to renew. So this, under a normal condition, under a normal CUP like this for special events, we wouldn't have an expiration date.
Correct. Right now, if not specified in a motion, it would go with the owner in perpetuity until they were to sell.
Right, so that's already been addressed in there, that this does not transfer. If they sell the property, then this does not go with it. So me personally, I don't think, it needs to be, have an expiration date of, 6 months, potential expiration date. If there are infractions and violations, then those will be filed, and then it can be
rescinded.
It can be rescinded. So I think we already have things in place to deal with this CUP if problems arise. I don't think we need to make a special exception, in my opinion, to bring it back in 6 months to reevaluate. We don't do that with other CUPs.
Right, but it was very important to the town. A person was on there giving their opinion that they did approve this, and that condition was very important to them, that they be able to revisit it.
But the
And we had
town
some
can
people in the
revisit it.
The town
We
can
don't
revisit
have-
it.
The town
Right.
can revisit it, and again, if at that time, or if prior to that, if there are infractions, violations, citations, law enforcement call up or whatever, then all of that would be taken into consideration. That would be brought to the attention of the zoning administrator, and then we can take steps to rescind that. So the town can they can do it every month, but I don't know if us at the county zoning committee need to put that stipulation in there. I don't think that that's a good precedent to set. We haven't done that I don't remember doing that the last 2 years doing the others.
Is that true, Jay, that the town can bring it back to us then to reconsider?
I don't know how that would work out.
Is this where we need to talk to you?
Yeah,
If I could, Mr. Chair, this is Andy again. The town can revisit it, sure, but it's up to this committee then to rescind or revoke that permit. That's not, the town doesn't have independent authority. So in reality, it'd be an informational session for the town. If this committee is going to place a durational limit on that permit, it needs to do that. And so I just want to be cautious that everybody understands that the town has no independent authority to cause the rescission or revocation of that permit.
Is the town overreaching their authority by asking us to revisit it in November?
No, I don't think so. I think the town can certainly do that. If you look at the statute on conditional use permits, it's in 59.69 sub 5E, I believe. You can have a durational limit on a conditional use permit. That's not, it's authorized by statute. So if the committee chooses, you can certainly do that. The word of caution I would throw out is that for an event planner or the owner of an event facility, they're going to want to accept reservations. And if you place too short of a durational limitation on the permit, they're not going to have certainty as to the ability to hold events. And so whatever it is, I would want to make sure that the committee considers what the impact on the event facility is going to be.
So Chair, can we extend that to January? Because just knowing how you have to book out, I think it would be respectful if we ask for a January reconsideration date so that they can plan for the following year if necessary. But I wouldn't say like summer of next year because they're already going to have to book
I don't want to put a
at all. I
limit
know.
on it at all. And I know that was a thing with the towns, and like's been brought up, the town can revisit this on their own. And if it's determined then that violations have occurred and they're not living up to the conditional use that have been mandated, then that can be brought to our attention. There's mechanisms in place to deal with this. We don't have to I don't think we have to recreate the wheel. We already have mechanisms in place to deal with infractions and violations. So I don't see having, it doesn't make sense to me to put this 6 month, limit on it. In my opinion, that's how I feel.
So do we vote on each of these?
I agree with you, Mr. Betcher.
It'd
We
be,
don't need to put that.
it'd be described in the motion maker as to what conditions.
No, I agree, but I'm in agreement with the chairman. I mean,
Right,
just to
so
move things along,
what I
we
was
vote
getting
on it.
at, what I was trying to avoid is somebody makes a motion and then we have all this discussion and amendment, change, amendment,
Yeah.
amendment.
Right.
So I was trying to hope to, I'm not trying to influence people, but I want to have a little bit of discussion before the motion is made. So we have a better idea of what it is. Is that?
I think you're on the right track there. And yeah, I mean, those are the things you do want to have in discussion because, yeah, like you said, all of a sudden someone makes a motion and, they didn't address, the driveway access, or was it 200 versus 300 or somewhere in the middle, or that they didn't address the fireworks versus non-fireworks. The 6 months for the town thing, you wouldn't have to add that in. If the town wants to revisit it, they can revisit it. I like your idea that if there are infractions that are brought to the town would then bring those to me and we could go through the process of rescinding of the conditional use permit. Ultimately, let's say that there was a capacity set to 200 and then the DeYoungs found that, hey, there's a wedding event that's wanting to come in next summer and they're anticipating 250 people. At that point, they would have to come back through basically a renewal conditional use permit to change those set conditions. So again, there are mechanisms in place to revisit this stuff in the future without setting renewal deadlines. At least at the county level.
And if I could, Mr. Chair, again, just procedurally, there's nothing stopping you from asking for a straw poll. It's not binding, but it's indicative of everybody's thoughts on what conditions they want to impose. So you can always ask for straw polls. That way, to your point, you don't have a series of motions and amendments.
Right. I like that. I just didn't want to, I didn't know we could do the straw poll. Okay, so that's good. So I think that, so the county administrator recommended 300, the town board recommended 200. I think a good compromise, in my opinion, would be 250. I don't know what everybody's thoughts are on that. And the other thing that was a little bit contentious maybe, or argumentative was the amplified music. I mean, even if you're having this family activity at a pumpkin patch, if we say no outdoor music, they can't even play some festive, fall pumpkin picking music or anything. And I don't know if I agree with no amplified, you can't even turn on the radio then outside by that definition. So yes, Ms. Hess.
There's already ordinances in place for that. So I don't think that we have to reinvent the wheel as well for that. I think all of these things are in place. So the noise
So
shouldn't
there's
be the
already
level.
noise ordinances. You can't have excessive
Correct, Jay.
noise past certain hours and stuff like that. Yep. So we don't have to add more restraints or constraints to what's already existing.
Yep. And those nuisance ordinances, noise ordinances, they do pick up at 11 p.m.
And yes. go ahead.
I just want to touch on the fireworks here. The town has to issue a permit for fireworks. I mean, that's not going to stop people from blowing stuff off over at their event barn, but without permits, because it happens all over. But anyway, if there's somehow when they do this, it should be up to the owner to indicate no fireworks allowed. Even if you get a permit from the town to do it. And with that many people around, fireworks are not the safe thing. So I was just, I don't think we need to say that we don't recommend fireworks, so just leave it up to the town.
Okay, so, yeah, I don't know if we need to address the fireworks again. There's mechanisms in place for that already. So personally, my biggest concern on this was the parking. I mean, this is my backyard. I live close to here and I know how bad that corner is already, and I don't want cars. I wouldn't want to see cars parked on Twin Lake Road. So that was my big concern. I know that was a concern of a lot of the adjacent property owners as well. It sounds like with the new gravel parking lot they have, it can accommodate 100 plus vehicles. That shouldn't be an issue. And I don't know if there's further steps to take, no parking signs along the road or something like that. I don't know. That's up to I don't want to put that in the conditions.
So what is the straw poll then on revisiting this in 6 months or a year? Kind of sounds like we don't need to, or there's already a mechanism in place
Like
to address
Mr.
this.
Becker was saying that we don't need to revisit it. If there's violations that come up through whatever to the town, and then the town brings it over to Jay, and then he'll bring it to this committee, and then we'll take a look at it.
You would do that, Jay?
Yeah, and that's how I guess it would be in there right now, unless there was a separate condition added, is that the town can revisit this. And when they revisit it in November, if there's individuals that come forward with evidence that, hey, here's a recording from 11:30 p.m. on a Saturday night and they were still playing music, that's a viable complaint that would be hopefully addressed to the town during that.
Yeah.
But then comes to me, which then we can bring up enforcement action, whether it's through citations for violation of conditions, or whether it's through potential revocation of the cup.
The only thing I'll caution is that the committee would not have the ability to impose new conditions on the permit. In the event that the town thinks that only left-handed people ought to be able to serve food at the events, then you can't place that condition. I realize that's an absurd example. I'm just illustrating that you don't have the ability to impose new conditions.
Right, okay. So I think we have discussed this, if somebody,
I think the only one that wasn't really discussed was as to the entrance and exit. As far as, is it limited to just the access off of Twin Lakes Road? Is it just the access off of Bethel Road? Is it both? I think that is something that you would want to address.
Haven't we redirected that to the Highway Commission previously because they make the safety determination?
And ultimately, this is town roads, so it would be up
So
to
the
the
town.
town. Yeah.
So isn't that already in place?
I
where they
don't
have
think they
to-
put any of that specialized condition in their paperwork. Just no town road parking is allowed.
But in the past, on other opportunities of entrances and exits that we've discussed, we've always sent it back to the town to find the safest median.
And that might be one of the conditions that you'd want to add is that town road supervisor recommendation for access.
Because there was one, I think we even deterred to the DOT, correct? I
Off
mean,
the state highway, sure.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but
there's
it
three
was
different
off,
levels of
yeah.
town, of roads.
Mhm.
There's DOT for state highways, there's county highway department for everything with a letter, highway G, highway H,
Mhm.
highway F,
Mhm.
and then all town roads is on the town. So there's three levels of entities throughout
Right.
what road you're on.
But as a zoning committee, we don't have the safety knowledge or the schooling to be able to say, you need to come off of this exit or this entrance.
Right.
Like, I feel like that's an overreach on our part without that.
And again, that might be something you just kick back to the town is that,
Mm-hmm.
you know, as a condition, it requires the town road supervisor to make the recommendation for access, or the town road supervisor. Which I'm not sure of that individual's name, but I know the town has one.
Great.
I think that's a good idea. And then that would be the entry point and exit.
Yeah,
Not-
based on their recommendation.
So
Mhm.
we could put that in there. Yes, Mr.
Mr. Young, have you met with the town road supervisor? Have you had any recommendations from the?
The planning commission and the board, I believe, recommended Twin Lake Road. So, and I think Mr. Martin, who was up earlier, said that, Martin Hampson, I think he mentioned that, right? Yeah, he said he didn't care for it to happen on Bethel, so
But there's a town road supervisor.
it would probably make more sense.
Because they determine like who gets a driveway and
Yes.
so that would be the better route.
Are you agreeable to that condition then?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mr. Betcher, one more question before
Yes.
we go. Ms. Hassel brought up, extending the operation of May through January.
No, I'm sorry. Can I clarify?
Yes.
It was just to revisit it in January from the November date. So
okay.
I'm not expressing
Oh, I thought you were-
extending. No, not at all.
All right, sorry.
Did you have a recommendation on changing the operational dates from May?
No.
Okay, so we still don't have a motion on this, but we have had some good discussion. Yes, Ms. Hassel.
I would like to make a motion to approve the CUP 22-020 with the ordinances in place by the zoning administration, changing it to 250, and also requesting that the town road supervisor determine the entrance and access to the event center, the event barn. I'm not sure what else I was supposed to vote on. I didn't write it down.
So you would specifically not be addressing fireworks or amplified music. You went to 250 on capacity. And you specifically didn't mention anything for revisiting at the county level.
So I believe that those situations are already in place at the town level. So it would be an overreach for us to address those two issues.
And added the town road supervisor recommendation for access.
That's correct.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion by Ms. Hessel recommending approval of the CUP with those conditions that were listed. And we can read those back if we need to. And we have a second by Mr. Buckholz.
Before you vote on that, we should have further discussion of the findings of facts.
The findings and facts are, I hate my screen, sorry. It would not destroy prime agricultural lands. It would be consistent with the town and our county comprehensive plan. Do you need others?
It'd be great. And we talked about That it would be the town road supervisor recommendation for access, that it would not create a traffic or highway access problem, and also that there'd be no town road parking.
It would not be detrimental to ecology, wildlife, wetlands, or shorelands. I can make that.
Yes.
Could
There should be
you
the say the traffic one.
Oh, geez, I can't find it. Didn't bring my cheaters. Sorry, guys. Thank you. It would not create traffic or highway access problems because we
we're-
are identifying that the town road supervisor will address those issues
And that no town road parking was allowed.
and no town road parking was allowed.
2, 3, 5, and 8.
And 6.
And 6.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? We need to read that back just so there's no confusion, or
Of the findings of facts or of the potential conditions?
of the actual conditions. So is everybody good? Do you need them read back?
I do not, because they're all written down there and we've got what is not
Well, I'll-
included.
Yeah, I'll read them specifically so that they're on record. So this would be the all-encompassing list, as this zoning committee has made a motion and seconded on, that it's operational May through October, that all functions must cease at 11 PM and start no earlier than 10 AM. Indoor rental only for smaller or private groups less than 50 people may occasionally occur before 10 AM. No motorhomes, RVs, trailers, tents, or the like are permitted on the White State grounds. All trash must be bagged and put in covered trash receptacles. Trash is then removed and put into large dumpsters at the tavern at White Stag. Meals and foods are prepared and served by licensed caterers. Beer, wine, and liquor requires town approval licensing and served by certified bartenders. Parking to remain entirely on property. No town road parking is allowed. Adequate number of portable restrooms and garbage receptacles will be provided per event according to industry standards. Capacity not to exceed 250 people. The conditional use permit is valid for current owner only. Must meet all other federal, state, county licensing requirements for event barns, and that it requires town road supervisor recommendation for driveway access.
Okay, my last comment, I just want to say that only because it was mentioned that if this does get approved, only 2 people win, and I just want to disagree with that. If this does get approved, I think hundreds of people win, 500 to 1,000 per year. I win, I live down the road. I think this is, I think this would be a great idea if it gets approved. So if there's no further discussion, we will have a roll call vote.
Stacy Hessel,
Yes.
Ron Buckles.
Yes.
Jesse Betcher,
Yes.
Tweet Schuman,
Yes.
John Rivera,
Yes.
all in favor.
Right. Yes, moving on. This is the public hearing for the Sawyer County zoning ordinance amendment to section 2.0 of definition, section 4.26 for a storage shed exemption, and section 9.21 of land use permit requirements. The proposed amendments are referenced to storage sheds and shipping container ordinance. The proposed ordinance amendment changes are found on the Sawyer County zoning website. This is the discussion. Well, actually, we'd have to open this as a public hearing, take in the public hearing, and then have the discussion action. And I can bring up the latest version here for you. This version has just changed very, very slightly from when we last saw it. And that was the addition of the language where we reference either the shipping container or intermodal container. That when we reference the definition of number 93, shipping containers and intermodal containers, further down in the language under 4.26, I referenced, shipping containers again, but didn't include intermodal containers to be consistent with how they're listed within that portion of the ordinance, I would want to specifically add how it's read in the definition section. So again, very minor change. It's just adding the full definition word, which is shipping container / intermodal container. Other than that, this is the same version that you saw in the previous month.
Okay, we need to,
Motion to go on public hearing.
so
I'll make that.
we have a motion by Ms. Hessel, second by Mr. Schuman, to go into public hearing. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we are in the public hearing.
Yeah, and before we open it up to the floor, we did send this out to the towns for their review. The town of Bass Lake approved, town of Coudray approved, town of Draper approved, town of Edgewater did not make a motion. The town of Hayward did approve. I just got that letter in from Bryn Hand. The town of Hunter approved. The town of Lenroot was against. The town of Meadowbrook approved. The town of Meteor approved. The town of Ojibwa was against. The town of Radisson did not redistribute back to us. The town of Round Lake was against. Town of Sand Lake against. Town of Weirgore against. The town of Winter was for. With those votes and not specifically counting Spider Lake as they have their own zoning jurisdiction and they had a zoning ordinance in place prior to the county adopting, we have 8 townships for, 5 townships against, and we do have over 50% of town approval.
Okay.
Yes, and I have a Chad Kolstad.
Mr. Chair.
Hey, yeah, please state your name and address, and thanks for being patient. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you. I'm Jed Bolstead. We purchased property at 14010 West County Road E. It's kind of on the south shore of Little Coudray. Last year, we put a camper there just to use, on weekends and stuff. And we're for the amendment, as it's proposed. We also would like to have the ability to put a deck on our camper. We have elderly family, elderly parents, both of us that would like to come to visit, just to have a small area where we can kind of have them feel comfortable to stay, kind of stand there. And I'd like to say maybe limit it to 200 square feet. Eventually, we're going to build on the site, but as of right now, we're just kind of waiting to figure out what our kids are going to be doing. They're both in high school, kind of depending on where they fall. We'd like to have that ability to have a deck there, just to have it like more user-friendly for our family. So just either like to add that to the amendment or propose a potential new amendment that would include decks. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir.
Unfortunately not. So what that individual with Mr. Kolstad had brought up, that would not be proposed within the ordinance amendment that we currently have, in that we would treat decks as accessory structures. And the only allowance that we're currently looking at in this one is for an exemption for a storage shed or a storage structure that would be less than 144 square feet. Currently, we would not allow decks on vacant land, whether they were used for camping or not. And I think Mr. Kolstad is either asking that we potentially revisit this and add that language in, or move forward with a potential another ordinance amendment that would allow decks on vacant lands used for camping. Because of how far and how long we've come in the current version that's out there, I would not make a recommendation that we would, open that up and include it in the current version that we have. But if this committee wants to look further into allowing decks on vacant land, we can certainly have that discussion, or you can basically petition me to draft ordinance amendment change and bring it back to this committee to look further into that as a separate ordinance amendment process.
But they would be authorized to build 150 square foot storage structure that was maybe 18 inches high. They could store stuff.
Don't find gray areas.
And
And only 144.
But a deck can't be built on anything that's not permanent, and you have to move a trailer, so it'd be a moot point. I mean, you have to move a camper, so you can't
in most towns, you have to remove the camper, but again, I mean, we would treat even as a deck platform right now, as an accessory structure. Accessory structures, specifically including decks, patios, garages, carports, Quonset huts, shipping containers, are viewed as an accessory structure which are not allowed on vacant land.
Right.
So we clarified that in the definition section, and then we open the door that if you want a shipping container on your land, before we treated them just as accessory structures, and that if you had a primary dwelling, you could come to the county, get an over-the-counter land use permit, and have a shipping container. The change that's in there now is that if you want a shipping container on a lot that contains a primary dwelling, you need to get town approval in order to do it as well. The other one is then for a shed, just a true shed, less than 144 square feet, that is the allowance that we're giving on vacant land. It's not specifically related to decks. If we wanted to open the door to allowing decks on vacant land, we would either have to change the current version we have or look at doing a separate amendment process at a later date. We did have one a year and a half ago where we did have allowance of decks in campgrounds, but nothing has been brought up for decks on private land that is a vacant lot. Yeah. Next, I have Linda Zilmer.
Linda Zilmer, 902 Holly Hill Lane, Birchwood, Edgewater property owner, and I was present at the Edgewater Town Board meeting, and when they looked at this language and they scratched their head, they said, we don't know what this means. They didn't even want to make a motion. So in general, I oppose expanding to allow these structures on vacant land for a couple of practical reasons. One is that I think it invites property crimes, and it'll be an increased demand on our already stressed law enforcement services. Second of all, as I understand it, the zoning department's pretty short-staffed and really can only address enforcement issues on a complaint basis. So they don't have time to be proactive and are struggling to keep up with complaints. We had heard in a previous meeting that other counties that have allowed this are now finding that people are using them to sleep in. And again, it's a matter of who has time to enforce. But should you go forward with this, I believe that the language should be changed because I don't think it's appropriate to write exemptions into your zoning ordinance. If this is going to be a permitted use, then list it as a permitted use in the zone districts. Are you only going to allow it in RR1, RR2, RR3? Are you going to allow it in all districts? In that case, if it's only by land use permit, it gets listed as a permitted use in the zone districts. If it requires town approval, then that's, and some of this language has conditions in it, then it's a conditional use requiring a conditional use permit, and it should be listed as a conditional use under the zone districts that you wish to allow it. So you have a number of towns that are opposed who maybe, if the language is a little clearer, they would either vote or maybe support it. And I also think, again, it's the language that's an issue besides my opposing it. I could live with it if you could prove it where it's enforceable and understandable and is very clear as either permitted or conditional use. Thank you.
I don't have any other letters here, but I do believe there's a hand raised online.
Go ahead. Online.
Yeah, hi, this is Ginny Chabak, 10363N McLean Road. Member of the Board of Town Round Lake, but representing myself. First of all, I have a question in that the language where it says that a shipping container would require town approval. What's the process for that if it's not a CUP?
Yeah, I would end up having it very similar to how we would have town approvals for someone building a residential structure in either the Forestry 1 zone district or the Agricultural 1 zone district, where we would first take the land use permit application for a shipping container, not sign off on it, submit it to the town with a town approval form. You would then hear it at your next town board meeting and then vote on whether or not it was approved or denied. If it came back with a denial, then I would not be able to sign off on the land use permit and basically give the application and the permit fee back to the individual. If you approved, then we would sign off on the land use permit and it would be issued.
Okay, thank you. My comment is that I believe that this should be considered in the same sort of fashion as the camping section of the zoning ordinance, where there are options for the towns, because it's not a one size fits all for the county. You know, there are places in the county where accessory structures and shipping containers are perfectly acceptable, and there are places where they are considered ugly and a problem for our tax base, our property values, our enjoyment of our property. So I would like to see this broken out into options, if that's possible. And I would also like to see in that option for residential to be, not allow shipping containers in residential. We, in the town of Round Lake, put that in their comments. And that way, you give the towns an option so that it would reduce conflict. If we were to bring every one of these up in our meetings, I believe there would be a lot of conflict, because in some towns, people really don't want them. And, like I said, in other places, it's fine. The option would help to reduce overall conflict when addressing these questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other
It's up to you.
you have something,
Question?
oh,
I guess too, as you're considering how you would move forward with this, I guess if someone could explain how this can be an accessory structure when there is no principal structure. And that gets to one of my underlying questions as to making it either a permitted or conditional use under a zone district. Because if there's no principal structure, how can they be an accessory structure? And I think that language should be, unless you can explain it, that language should be looked at.
yeah, that's been explained by Mr. Kozlowski.
Oh, I'm sorry, can you explain it again? I didn't hear the explanation.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm comfortable doing that. I mean, ultimately, we've had conversations with legal counsel. Legal counsel has signed off on this. We added some of the recommendations from legal counsel. And this was, a difficult one to kind of, to piecemeal out, in that the storage shed or storage structure is an exemption. And that was one of the ways to do this, in that when we're classifying them as a true storage shed or storage structure, we're not actually viewing it then as an accessory structure. That a storage shed and a storage structure has to meet very specific conditions of that, where it's to be used exclusively for the storage of tools, materials, and equipment, not used for human habitation. And then when we list it as part of that exemption, again, requires that a parcel must meet a minimum of 20,000 square feet of land area, not allowed in platted subdivisions. It has to be less than 144 square feet, must be less than 14 feet in height, that no habitation is allowed, that it needs to meet the applicable setbacks, that a fire number would be required on that lot if you're wanting to place a storage shed or storage shed or storage structure. That if that storage shed is to be used as a shipping container, that it needs to be less than still the 144 square feet, which limits shipping containers as that type of exemption. And then it also needs a driveway permit from respective town or county highway department. There isn't an easy way to break this out unless we call it a true exemption. And there are other exemptions that are found within the shoreline zoning standards. So to say that, exemptions in the ordinance are not put in there, there are several exemptions listed within the shoreline zoning ordinance that comes straight from the state. So, yes.
Can I make a motion to approve this resolution?
So we have.
You would have to close the public hearing first.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'll make a motion to close the public hearing. I forgot that we were in that.
You should ask if there's anyone else out wanting to speak on it though.
So before I get a second, I need to make sure there's no more public comments during the public hearing. All right, there's none. We have a motion to come out of public hearing by Ms. Hessel with second by Mr. Schuman. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Nay.
This is the discussion action for the proposed ordinance amendment to Sawyer County zoning ordinance, section 2.0 for definitions, section 4.26 for a storage shed, storage structure exemption, and section 9.21 for land use permit requirements.
Okay, now, committee, we have a majority of the towns recommending approval of this. We have 8 to 5. I think we have a pretty good, not perfect, but it's pretty good. Jay's done a lot of work on it. So I'll leave it up to the committee now to take further action.
And I'll just say that before it goes to county board, which ultimately it would if there's a recommendation for approval here, I'm going to go specifically back out to the town of Edgewater and to, to ascertain any questions that they may have, as well as the town of Radisson. Those were the two that did not submit responses back to us. Maybe even to re-put it back on their agendas for July prior to it going to county board.
Right. But even if they come back with a no, they would still be 8 to 7.
Correct.
Which is all.
Jay, would you go to those town board meetings in case there's any questions or?
I would reach out to the clerk and or town chair first to see if they would want me to attend those. If they had specific questions. It sounded like, I wasn't at the town of Edgewater's meeting, but if they had, confusion on this, when we started this process, and even 2-3 months ago with this process, but we had a summary, we did the questionnaire, so I'm not sure where there's confusion to be had there, but I'll certainly try to again ascertain any questions that they may have. If they want me to attend their town board meetings, I can certainly do that as well.
Sure.
And then again, the main intent of this was to we have a lot of people that have wanted to have a small shed on their property, whether it's in conjunction with camping or whether it was in conjunction with hunting, as a place to store equipment when they're not there. Otherwise, people are trying to tuck stuff underneath their campers or throw tarps out of it or having to haul it back and forth all the time. So, I mean, we probably received, I would say 50 to 100 calls within the last 3 years of people saying, well, can't I just put a small shed on my land? I just want to store a lawnmower in there. I just want to store the gas cans. I got some, garden tools that I want to keep in a closed, dry environment. Nope, sorry, you can't do it. Our ordinances don't allow it by. So that's what's promulgated this. That and also the aspect of shipping containers, and that some towns didn't care, some towns didn't want them. So we codified that if you want a shipping container, you got to get a permit on it and you need town approval. To go the town option route, then we got to keep track of which option your town's in. I don't already like our camping ordinance as it is as town options. I like how we have our process set up for if you're building a residential structure in ag land or forestry land that it requires a town approval. So we give it back to the towns and say, towns, do you want to allow a residential structure on a 40-acre parcel of forestry? Most towns do because they're collecting in additional tax revenue in that aspect. If certain towns want shipping containers, they're going to have the opportunity to vote on them at their town board meeting. If they don't want them because of a certain zone district, then the town can decide that themselves. Those were the two focus points of this ordinance amendment.
And this is not set in stone. I mean, we could revisit this if needed by amendments.
Right, we could do additional amendments really at any time through this process. And what we have on the table right now is a resolution for the ordinance amendment. It's up to this committee then to either make adjustments to that, to deny it, or to approve it, which then goes on to county board for ratification of an ordinance amendment change.
But I think if we try to make an amendment in the motion today,
Gotta go, yeah, depending on
Yeah.
to what extent, if it's a, grammatical error, or something like those are minute enough to carry them forward. But if there was, something that, well, we should go back and make them 160 square feet instead of 144, that would kick the process back. We'd have to go back to the towns. We'd have to hold another separate public hearing on it for any type of approval process to move it further on the county board. Yes.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the resolution of the zoning county ordinance amendment presented by the zoning administrator to move it forward to the full county board.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Ms. Hessel for recommending approval of the ordinance amendment and a second by Mr. Righeimer. Any further discussion? I have two questions. So one, they're gonna have to get a fire number. If they, on vacant land, they put a shed there, they have to put a fire number.
Yep.
And that will be, will the landowner be notified of that requirement when they apply for the permit? 'Cause I mean,
Yes.
Otherwise, they might not just necessarily know that.
Yeah, and you would also still be required a permit. It's not just you can allow it and you can go put this shed. You have to have a land use permit for it. And in conjunction with the land use permit, you'll now need a fire number. And I had that discussion with town assessors that even for, 100 square foot shed, that may be, $4,000. The town assessor is now going to assess that as an improvement value. So there is additional tax revenue that is generated through this process.
And then my other question is for the, now that you need town approval for a shipping container, not on vacant land, but on primary residence land.
Yep.
What about people that already have shipping containers?
They would be grandfathered. Not that I like to use the word grandfather, they'd be existing non-conforming. And they would continue to be existing non-conforming until said time that this ordinance amendment is ratified by county board.
Okay.
So if county board ratifies this in July, July 21st, I believe is the county board date. Any applications that are submitted prior to that for a shipping container on a lot that contains a primary dwelling would just be through a land use permit process. After July 21st, if county board ratifies, they would have to have the town approval process in conjunction with that.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not, we're gonna need a roll call vote. Captain?
Stacy Hessel,
Yes.
Jesse Betcher,
Yes.
Tweet Schuman,
Yes.
Ron Buckholz,
Yes.
John Righeimer,
Yes.
all in favor.
Wonderful. We want to try to go through these real quick. The first one under new business, and I guess, Andy, I have a question for you as far as, new business items. Is that something that this committee should, be getting input from the public? Because we do have several, public hearing slips that were submitted for new business items.
Well, I mean, it would, gosh, that's a good question. If those individuals have not had the opportunity to speak, I think in fairness, if they thought they'd be given the opportunity under new business, we provide them with that opportunity. But Jay, let's you and I discuss how procedurally we set this up for the future.
Okay, fair enough. The first one I have is a conditional use permit that we heard back in, when was this? Yeah, back in March. It was conditional use permit number 22-005, Beverly Scar, agent Joshua O'Rourke. The motion that was made at that meeting was to adjourn conditional use permit number 22-005 in that that it was adjourned with additional information needed for an engineering for the driveway, a grading for the building and driveway permit from the county. That was then quickly seconded and approved, and we adjourned it. That adjournment never specified any timeline or deadline. And I hate to have just a conditional use permit sitting out there in limbo with no expiration date, because theoretically right now, 7 years from now, you could come back and say, oh yeah, I did that engineering, I want to move forward with my conditional use permit. I don't want to babysit that. I would like this committee to go back on record and to specify a deadline in which the applicant needs to provide that information in order for this conditional use permit to move forward. My recommendation would be as November 1.
Of 20.
And if I could just clarify, I'll weigh in very briefly on what Jay was talking about. The word adjournment is what's confusing. It's really not an adjournment, it's a postponement. And whenever we postpone something, it ought to be to a time certain. And so I think his recommendation is that you set that clock so that he has that necessary information to advise the landowner when the material is due back before the committee.
So I'd be looking for a motion to set a deadline for the additional conditions to be provided back to the zoning committee, or provided back to the zoning department by November 1st.
I'll make that.
I'll second that.
So we have a motion by Mr. Barfold, second by Mr. Schuman, to set the deadline of 1 November.
Yes.
Any further discussion? I'll just say, I think that's fair, because so March, that's 6 months. October would be 6 months, it was just over 6 months. I mean, that seems more than reasonable.
Yes. And we usually do put a timeline on it.
Right, and it got seconded and passed so quick, and then I just, it was Steve Sorensen and myself at the same time, we're like, oh no, like we forgot to add a timeline on that. So that's why we're bringing it back to get that timeline in there, so.
Sure. All right, any further discussion? If not, we can roll call.
No, just a motion, and you can do a voice vote.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0.
All right, next is the consideration of the request to waive the requirements of section 9.1 of the Sawyer County Zoning Committee Rules and Bylaws for the Pinewood Properties LLC request. The requirements of section 9.1 is the 1-year refiling rule. There are provisions further than in section 9.7 for the waiver of the requirements. The provisions of section 9.0, be it the 1-year refiling rule, can be waived by the zoning committee upon a majority vote of the zoning committee members present. The applicant for those Pinewood Properties rezone and conditional use permit request had come to me asking, how can we reapply for this at an earlier date? I said the only way that it's going to be even considered is if there is a change in the request. The applicant, Mr. Adam Bodenschatz, had conveyed to me that he is looking at reducing the overall number of sites. And basically the request you have in front of you is to waive the 1-year refiling rule. If it was waived as of today, the applicant, if they were able to get information to us today, would be into August. Otherwise, we'd be looking at a potential September new information provided for a new public hearing process. This doesn't, automatically waive anything or give him abilities that he's going to get approval this time. He would be just given the opportunity to reapply under a change of his initial plan earlier than the 1 year. So best case scenario is he could reapply for things in September of this year, or worst case, he'd have to wait until March of 2023, as that is when the initial case was heard. That is what you have in front of you. I do have probably a couple of people that want to speak on that. And we heard Andy at the beginning of this that because people may have been under the impression that they had an opportunity to speak under this new business item, I guess I would ask the chairman to open it up to those that would want to speak on that.
And if I could, Mr. Chair, can I just have a couple of moments to brief the committee on the legal analysis on this one?
Yes, please do.
Yeah, you might recall the Pinewood Properties, that was a matter that was recommended to the full county board, and on the eve of the county board meeting, the clerk received a petition of 50% or more of the property owners, which triggered the 3/4 vote requirement in order to pass the rezone petition. And or actually it was a CUP request, it was rezoning and a CUP, I'm sorry. And that failed at the county board level. Property owner by council submitted some procedural irregularities associated with the submission of the petition. Regardless of the procedural irregularities, which I disagreed with and said that there's no legal basis for the complaint, property owner had indicated to administrator, I want to change the plan. I've heard the concerns and I want to address those concerns. I want to change the plan. In conversations with the administrator, neither he nor I were comfortable suggesting that the change was significant enough to not trigger the 1-year refiling requirement. And we did not want to create precedent, which is why it's on the agenda for this meeting here today. It's ultimately up to you. We don't have a plan in front of us in order for you to consider whether there's a material change that would justify waiver of the 1-year rule. But in this circumstance, given everything that happened surrounding that petition, I think it would be appropriate if the committee said we're going to waive here. In other words, it would not create lasting precedent that would forever create problems for the committee. At the same time, if the committee doesn't want to hear about this until March, that's certainly within the committee's purview as well. You can do that. What I did hear from Landowners Council is that if you wait until March, it does not provide landowner with adequate time to plan for what it is that landowner wants to do with that property. Whether that's right, wrong, indifferent, true or untrue, I don't know. I'm just letting you know what information I have in relation to this particular request.
Okay, so thanks, Andy. Am I required to open this up for public hearing since it's not actually listed that way?
Public comment.
Right, it would not be a public hearing, it would just be public comment. I think it's appropriate if the individuals wishing to comment were under the belief that they had the opportunity to address this committee at this time. That was my only suggestion. And then I think I'll work with Mr. Kozlowski to make sure that we have the appropriate procedures in place in future meetings.
Okay, so does there have to be a motion to go into public hearing then, or can I ask for public? Okay.
Yeah, no, you can just, it's the same as a public comment at the beginning of the meeting, Mr. Chair. You just say, okay, it's time for the public to comment, and then you follow those regular public comment rules.
Okay, thank you. So at this time, then I will allow public comments just specific to the Pinewood properties, our consideration of waiving the requirements for the 1-year waiting period. Up to 3 minutes. So who's ever first?
I don't have any in here, but I see a hand up.
All right, go ahead, sir. Please say your name and address, and I'll have 3 minutes.
Adam Bodenschatz, 9948 Antwood Creek Lane, Hayward, Wisconsin. I'm the owner of Pinewood Properties. And I requested this for this request before the year is up to resubmit a plan that I guess might be more palatable to, I guess, the community and like specifically the surrounding neighbors. And the reason I felt that this would be a fine thing to do would be I did get approvals from all committees, all boards. It's just I didn't get the supermajority. Well, I guess I'm looking at, I don't know if I was denied or not, just I didn't get the supermajority. And if I can offer a plan that is different and be more palatable, that's why I'm here, to get my project going sooner than later and go from there. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Is there any other? Richard Gondek, you have 3 minutes. Please state your address.
It's actually, it's under my father and co-counsel's account here for the Zoom. My name is actually Jacob Gondek. My firm is at 1215 Belknap Street in Superior, Wisconsin here. I represent the adjacent landowners, or many of them, to where the Bodenschatz plan on putting in this, what used to be the golf course, the now campground plan and so on. I've been at a few of these meetings so far. What I would just say at this point, talking about setting a precedent, I mean, I guess really what this boils down to is every time somebody kind of shoots for the moon with their plan and it gets shot down at one level or another, or one board meeting or another, or so on, all this does is sets a precedent that you can come back, revise it, and try again with absolutely no manifest error made, no procedural, hiccups, just Okay, that didn't work. Let's modify it and try again. And that's, understanding that there's the year requirement, and that's fine. But this is just a loophole to get around that, and people could consistently use that to do that. So I would just ask that you respectfully deny this, the revision of ultimately looking at this new plan, and make Mr. Bodenschat submit that in March. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Next, I have Guy Houston.
Guy Houston.
Hello, my name's Guy Houston. Do I have to do the address?
If you don't mind, just for the record.
15873 West Sunshine Acres Lane. To use the analogy, it's the same wine in a new bottle with a new label. Like the others have said, this is just kind of a loophole to get by this. We did have a supermajority vote. It required 75% of the people to pass it. I mean, there were a lot of landowners around this piece of property. They took a lot of time and effort. Lawyers were hired. I think in all fairness that he should have to wait a year. I mean, he can come back, but to say that, hey, we're gonna decrease the size a little bit. This is a new plan. It's not a new plan. And really, that's all I have to say. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Yes, sir. Please state your name and address, and we'll have 3 minutes.
Lee Newschmunder, 15986 West Fund Valley Road. I appreciate what he said very much. However, at the township level, what we were first given as a plan had a golf course around it, 9 holes. And between when that happened, then a lot of things changed in that, such as distances from homes. And so I'm saying the same thing. If he's just gonna keep making little changes and trying to come back, and all those other people aren't even here, they're not even aware this meeting's here, and he's even trying to do it. We're homeowners, we didn't get notices, but Pinewood property should be required to wait 1 year, follow the rule, and there should not be a new precedent set. We deserve that as neighbors, and we deserve it as property owners.
Are you on the town board, sir, you say?
No, I'm not. I am a neighbor.
Okay.
I have 3 lots on the property.
Any other public
I have a
comments?
home on the property.
Not seen any of them. Okay. Really, it's just, it would require majority vote of this committee to waive the 1-year refiling.
Sure.
Yes.
I make a motion to deny the waiver requirements.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Buckles to deny the waiving of the 1-year requirement.
I'll second that.
We have a second by Mr. Schuman. Any further discussion? So I would like to say that I think everybody knows I was in favor of this. It did pass both town boards. It passed the committee. It went to the full board and it received a simple majority vote there of 8-7. It did not get the supermajority though. I think it's a great idea. I think the landowner has, the burden of proof has been on him and he's done his due diligence. And I think it would be a good thing. But although I'm in favor of it, I'm not in favor of making an exception to our rule of 1 year. I don't think that there's been sufficient evidence, presented to waive this. It's the same thing. It's a RV park in the same place. Now, maybe the numbers have been reduced or whatever, but I don't believe there's been enough of a change to warrant this precedent setting of giving a waiver to the 1-year requirement. I sympathize with you And like I said, I'm in favor of what you're trying to do, but I don't think it warrants waiving this requirement. So we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? The motion is for, no public comments are over, sir. So the motion is for denial of waiving the 1 year requirement. Motion by Ms. Buckles, second by Ms. Schuman. You have public comment or a discussion comment? Sorry.
Yeah. So Jay, he can bring this back to us in March then with a modified plan.
Modified
And
plan,
represent-
same plan, increased amount of
Oh,
site
okay.
plan, doesn't matter in March.
We
Because that
just
would be
got a
1 year.
1 year.
Mhm.
Okay, any further discussion? We're gonna need a roll call vote
Okay.
on this.
Tweet Schuman,
Yes.
Stacy Hessel,
No.
Ron Buckles,
Yes.
John Righeimer,
No.
Jesse Betcher,
Yes.
3-2 to deny.
All right, moving on to letter C. Zoning committee interpretation of the Sawyer County zoning ordinance for how many units constitute a resort. So this again, I brought this to zoning committee back in September of 2020, where I had an individual that had 2 existing cabins on one lot. Those 2 existing cabins were on a non-conforming lot, being that he couldn't split the lot and put them on each separate lot, but they were existing dwelling units dating back before even the 70s. At that time, when I brought it to the committee in September of 2020, this committee kind of gave direction, or at least the discussion to me, as it was kind of as an open discussion, in that they didn't see that rental of both of those units would constitute as a resort. In conversation with our previous legal counsel, Rebecca Roker, she had kind of stated that, we didn't need to make any kind of motion, and that would basically give me, the zoning administrator, office policy to enforce that, as well as, do an ordinance amendment in the future to solidify that. Ultimately, that decision made by myself, the zoning administrator, was then appealed to the Sawyer County Board of Adjustments. Sawyer County Board of Adjustments upheld my decision. But then we heard from the zoning Board of Appeals chairman last month that he didn't know if he would vote the same way again, because there are kind of indiscrepancies within that zoning ordinance. That decision by the Board of Adjustments is now getting appealed to Circuit Court. I have this on the agenda for discussion action again, and to potentially solidify this committee's decision on that. This was somewhat, recommended that we get more of a solid motion in place. And I guess that's where I'm coming from. As far as, how the ordinance reads for the definition of a resort. And again, this would be all things that, again, I'll be the first to admit that this isn't perfect language and probably needs an amendment one way or the other to solidify it. Not to say that I'm, on one side or the other, but I'm stuck in the middle ground as administrator, make a decision and stick with it, knowing that either decision I make is going to probably be legally challenged. But number 85 is the definition for a resort. A resort is for-profit business holding a seller's permit and licensed by the Wisconsin Department of Health and Family Services, which provides rental to the public of dwelling units, plural, contained in one or more permanent buildings used primarily for recreational use. Now, I'll admit that there are 2 units on that property. But again, it's whether or not that was the intent of the ordinance. There's multiple properties in Sawyer County that have two existing primary dwellings. So we were an old resort community, an old resort county. And a lot of times when these lots got split back up in the 70s and 80s, when the resort business started to to peter off, all of a sudden there'd be two little cabins on one lot. And now we're flashing forward to the 2020 era where people are saying, oh, hey, there's two cabins out here. I want to rent both of those. I don't want to run a full functioning resort. Is that I would see that a resort would have other commonalities to it, such as lodging, laundry facility, bar, restaurant, something as a larger type of resort setting. But again, I'll be the first to admit that that's not what that definition states. So again, I'm bringing it back to the committee for interpretation and to potentially have a motion as to how many units on a property that you would constitute as meeting that definition of resort.
Can you remind me, is there an ordinance on VRBOs that would fall into that same category? Because if you have,
Right, not really. So the short-term rental licensing handled now through the health department kind of looks at zoning code as well as their own code. Their own code license rentals from 1 to 5, 5 to 10, and 10 plus. Those are the different licensing procedures for short-term rentals. So they don't fit in line with the zoning ordinance code, which becomes, kind of problematic when we are having these scenarios through Matt McKay, the one of the public health officers for short-term rentals. We've identified 6 properties in which there are existing dwelling units on that are being requested to rent both of those dwelling units out. There are multiple others that are as true, defined and continual operation resorts, such as Treeland Resorts or Shady Nook Resorts, ones that have been resorts for the entirety of time. But now we're seeing these smaller resorts back from the 70s that have those multiple dwellings on that same lot that want to rent both of them and not do it as a more of a full-blown resort. Like I said, this is going to circuit court anyways. I'm sure we're not done with these conversations, and they'll probably will need to have ordinance solidification one way or the other. And again, I don't care which way this goes in the end. I don't lose sleep over this aspect, but at the same point, we need to solidify it one way or the other. You're not bound by any of these decisions that you would make here today, but I mean, one of the reasons why I'm reaching back out to you is from some of those conversations that we had in September of 2020. At that time, John, obviously you weren't on, Stacy, you weren't on, Tweet, I believe you were an alternate at that point.
I was an alternate.
You were an alternate, maybe?
Yeah.
Maybe Tweed was on one or two. Ron was on, and that was it. We also had Bruce and the late Troy Morgan. So I mean, the committee has changed, obviously, from that initial discussion. But there are uncertainties with that ordinance, and again, asking you to solidify on how many units do you constitute as being as a resort, and would other amenities commonly occur within a resort setting?
can I ask, when they do their tax base, are they considered condos? I mean, so how do you have 2 dwellings that you could rent out is what I'm, without it being listed as a resort or a condo or a VRBO?
Right. So right now, when we have these circumstances, they're just assessed as residential, as both an improvement value for that one and an improvement value for that one. The short-term licensing right now would easily allow one. It's whether you allow both of them to be as short-term rentals. Once you allow both of them as short-term rentals, are you now a resort? And that's really the crux of the matter. The short-term rental licensing allows rental of 1 unit. There's no issues with that. And that is something specifically that was taken away from zoning and put specifically in health department for short-term rentals. It's now, okay, you have 2 existing dwellings. You want to rent them both out. Are you a resort? Yes or no? The discussion back in September said, at least, discussion as we're doing here now, is 2 of them was not a resort, 3 of them would be a resort. but we never did any motions. That was just discussion between the committee.
Are we still in discussion or can I make a motion?
Yeah. Oh,
Because we have this on the agenda item, similarly how Andy said, we should probably open it for public comment. I do have a public comment slip for this. And that this individual is probably under the impression that they would have an opportunity to speak on this.
oh, so we are voting on something.
Yeah.
So that you have a. Okay. Is there any public comments?
Linda Zilmer, 902 Holly Hill Lane, Edgewater property owner. And I think, as was stated at the Board of Appeals hearing and will probably be verified in circuit court, is that the existing zoning ordinance language is very clear. It is 2 or more. It's not 3. The language is 2. It's a shame that a resident has to take this to court. The discussion back in 2020, as the minutes reflected, was can these be rented or not? And I remember extensive discussion about, yes, they can rent it, but I don't remember without a transcript, was a discussion of if it is a resort or not. So the issue becomes, if it's a resort, it would require a conditional use permit. Is that correct?
Right, and a conditional use permit that becomes, again, there's problems with that. And now you have 2 dwelling units on the same lot that can't meet those definitions of a multi-dwelling development.
So what are you asking? I guess my question is, this is an agenda item, but it's not clear to me what you're asking for. Are you asking for a number for them to vote on? Or are you asking for something more? So thank you.
Yeah, what I'm asking for again is furthering the discussion from September of 2020 for those that may have been on or whether or not you want to go on record now is how many units do you constitute as a resort? I can bring up the audio from that September meeting, but there was discussion that we would not view 2 as a resort, 3 would be as a resort.
But what does, I mean, are we just doing this in a vacuum or is there state statute addresses?
It would be as a county, it would be for the county
So
ordinances.
there's nothing in the state statutes anywhere that says that identifies or defines resorts based on a number of units, right?
Not that I was able to find, no.
So then we, Andy, do you have any, before a motion is made, do you have any input on?
Americans over 64 are.
I'm not over 64. No, there's nothing in state statute, and Jay described it right. He just wants guidance on the record as to what this committee believes a resort to consist of in terms of the number of dwellings. And it's not clear in the ordinance exactly how that is, and we've seen that play out in a couple of situations. I think that this is ripe for an amendment at some point, but obviously the process of amendment takes a while. So I think he's looking for guidance on the record as to what this committee views a resort to be. So it's that simple, it's the number.
Do you have any experience or input from other counties on a number that they have used?
No, because every ordinance is going to be different in terms of the definitions that they use and how they describe the various layouts, categories of places and things like that. And it's all intertwined. And when I say that, I mean that the reason that it's important is that that definition is going to flow through to all of the different provisions within the ordinance. And so there's no set state standard, if you will, on that because different counties do it different ways. And I don't know if, Jay, you've done a survey of anybody, but I can't imagine that there's a lot of apples to apples comparisons that go on.
I would highly doubt it. I'd probably get 72 different responses back.
Right.
And the one other thing I guess I want to mention, there are provisions with a conditional use permit that you can apply for a multi-dwelling development, which means a new condominium, hotel, motel, or resort. Okay, great. Let's go to the definition then of multi-dwelling development. Multi-dwelling development, regardless of the form of ownership, is consisting of 3 or more dwelling units. So, okay, when you have 3 or more dwelling units, you're, as part of that multi-dwelling development, you can apply for a conditional use permit. 1, we don't care about, 1 we know. It's when we have 2 that there's this loophole, there's a gap. There's no codification is, okay, we have 2 dwelling units on 1 lot. What can you do with them? Multi-development says 3 or more. Resort says dwelling units, plural. And that's where I leave my head scratching and say, I don't know what to do.
Ms. Hessel.
If it's appropriate at this time, I'd like to make a motion to have the number be 3 or more to follow the guidance of the multi-unit dwellings. So that they're the same, so that the verbiage is the same. So a resort would consist of 3 or more.
Second.
We have a motion by Ms. Hessel to identify or define a resort as 3 or more dwellings, 3 or more structures, dwellings, and a second by Mr. Schuman. Is that right?
Spot on.
Any further discussion?
Jay, that audio, that was court counsel and they read it that it was 2 or more, right?
Say that again?
When we did that one that you're talking about. where-
September?
Yes. Weren't we told 2 or more for a resort?
No, not to my recollection of that audio recording, is that we were talking about that 2 would not be constituted, but 3 would. And that's
Oh,
ultimately
okay.
what the motion that Ms. Hessel.
I know, and I listened to that, and then I guess I didn't get all to that part of it.
Okay.
That you gave me, so, okay.
All right, I can bring this back up as another, agenda item. We can listen to that audio. It's about 15 minutes in discussion length.
Yeah.
We do have a smaller agenda for next month.
I mean, no, I don't know if that's necessary. We got input from our current legal counsel. We have a motion in a second.
Yes.
And it makes sense to me. My only question is, do we need to then define what 2 dwelling units is? Is that something that?
Yeah, and we're gonna have to do amendments to the ordinance to codify and solidify this, whatever way you want to go on it. There's a gap, there's some gray area there that needs to be solidified. And whether that discussion through a public hearing process and town input say, nope, 2 units is a resort, then fine, let's get it in there. If we want to say that 3 units or that 2 is fine and 3 is a resort, fine, but let's get it in there. Because right now it's, to me, vague on how I'm able to direct this applicant or this individual, and several, actually 6 individuals now, that have 2 units on 1 lot and they want to rent both of them out as short-term rentals. Because there's not clear, at least to me, there's not clear ordinance direction as to, you can apply for this or you can do this.
Okay, so will this motion do anything to rectify that situation where there's 2 dwellings on one property? Doesn't sound like.
Not
it does.
likely, because ultimately that decision, my decision, is going to be challenged at circuit court. At least this committee is now back on record as to the direction I got back in September of 2020, where that 2 would not be as a resort, 3 would.
Mr. Chair.
Well, and if I could just interject quickly, is that from a legal standpoint, once this committee goes on record with an interpretation, then somebody can challenge that through the Board of Adjustment and ultimately to circuit court. So I think Jay's point is, look, honestly, I don't have an opinion as to whether it should be 2 or 3. I just want direction from the committee as to how I should apply the zoning code so that when I make a decision, then the issue is ripe, if you will, for determination by the Board of Adjustment or the circuit court if necessary.
Okay, thanks, Andy. Yes.
Is there something that we can put on the agenda for next month as an amendment to, if there is 2, this is how we handle 2? I mean, is there something that you would like?
Yeah, I could probably start a draft process of an ordinance amendment. Will it get on the agenda for next month? Maybe. It would be as a draft version. If we go through this amendment process, it's several months before it ever gets approval. But yeah, I think we should
That's what
start
we
that
need.
process.
We
So
need exactly what she
Mhm.
said.
Because could 2 be a house and then an above garage apartment? Like those are things that
Right.
I would like to know what
Yep.
constitutes two dwellings
Yep.
and, okay, thank you.
I think this is a good step with this motion defining resort as 3 or more. So we have that motion in a second. Any further discussion on that? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we can go over these last two real quick. I know Mr. Fetcher has to catch a flight. We had, as per your suggestion, to bring up dates and times of the zoning committee meetings. I know sometimes Friday morning at 8:30 is difficult to get to for all individuals. Do we want to look at potentially moving that around in the future? Generally, we would bring that as an agenda item in October for approval of the 2023 dates. There are mechanisms in place that we could still change the 2022 dates, but I would prefer not to, just because we've already have them earmarked on the calendar. This is going to require us to bounce around and find room and availability if we start changing 2022 dates. If we want to look at 2023 dates, I'm all up for it. So right. So what I want to do is, I know that it's been brought up in the past by different committee members that this time it's not the best for everybody's schedule. So I just wanted to do kind of a straw poll and see if this is something we want to get on the agenda for later, realizing we cannot vote on it. We cannot change anything this month or next month or the month after. The earliest we could possibly do it would be, even November would get a little bit problematic, because we did have motions in place for the setting of the dates in October of 2021 for setting of the dates of 2022. So again, in October of 2022, we'll have an agenda item to setting of the dates for 2023.
Yeah, because I like to get them early enough to be put on the calendar.
And the other thing you have to realize too is, as far as, when applications come into our office and when we have to set out our publication dates and get the information to the towns, I would not recommend moving this date forward in the month at all. There is some room to move further back in the month. Generally our zoning committee meetings are always the third Friday of the month. You could look at because you're not always going to have a fourth Monday of the month potentially.
Mondays are horrible.
You'll never have any fourth day of the month potentially.
What?
Is there?
There's 4
Why
weeks in a
don't you
month.
Is there?
hand out the calendars.
If the day starts on a Tuesday though, is there 4 Mondays? Say in February?
Regardless, are you asking for a,
What I'm asking for is if there's a consensus, if we want to get this on the agenda for October to discuss an alternate time.
yes,
And if so, the time I was thinking based on other committee meetings and times, so it looks like Tuesday mornings. It looks like Tuesday mornings are. So here are the other committee meetings on the calendar. This is just for July.
Yeah.
can I,
So I got, Mr. Chairman, for a couple more years, I would prefer they be in the evenings. Interrupts my work schedule. I mean, I'm
I would
fine.
prefer that also, but knowing that they go for 4 hours.
that's, but that is, so this is my concern. If we change the date, can we also have a maximum time? So like our county board meetings, 6:30 to 8:30, that's how we show the time on our calendar. It's 6:30 to 8:30. So couldn't we do that in respect to zoning, or is it because?
The nature of the beast.
I see Andy shaking his head a little bit on that might be
Who are we
problematic,
trying to accommodate here?
The people that work, like I'm working as I sit here.
Well,
So
then you people, if you should have looked at that before you got on the zoning board. You guys want us to change the whole world. I mean, this has been working forever until you got on there.
until I got on there, I think
Yeah.
Mr. Shubin
This
just
is
addressed
brought up
that.
every couple of years.
Oh, no.
So
And it never got changed in them every couple of years either.
So are you saying that it affects your work schedule as well? John, does it
It
affect?
affects my work, but I have difficulty evenings for
other reasons.
And just for the record, I did not bring this up as a discussion. I am just discussing
Yeah,
it
no,
now.
This was me bringing it up, having heard other people mention things, and it affects me as well. Hey, the $50 I get for this meeting is great, but it absolutely does not pay my mortgage. So I have to do other work, and then I have a boss, and when I tell them I have to take off Friday for 4 hours once a month, it doesn't always go well.
What about Saturday?
No.
So I think that, it sounds like we have, it sounds like 3, possibly 4 people are looking at maybe being in favor. And we're not.
I have difficulty in evenings. I mean, other things are.
But it sounds like you're open to putting this on an agenda for discussion and possible action for October, where then we can vote to change for the 2023 calendar year.
And this is kind of a straw poll, because ultimately, when you get this in October to set the 2023 dates, I want a straw poll vote as to, okay, well, when do I put these dates on so we can approve, Kathy's calendar of the dates versus, trying to correct it while we're here sitting in committee.
Is it a day or evening issue or a day issue or both?
I think it's both.
But it's just a nice topic to discuss as well, so that we know that it works for everybody. I apologize if me being on the board affects you negatively, because that's the way you come across, but I'm gonna stay, so you're gonna have to like it.
That's fine. That's fine. I mean, I guess I'm not against it. It's depending on when it's gonna be.
And that's for the discussion.
One question, why is the zoning committee the only one that meets after the full county board? All the other committees meet before.
Well, one of the reasons is that prior to the zoning committee making their determination, we have to allow towns at least 10 days to submit a petition for an objection of a rezone. So they ultimately have to be scattered at least 10 days apart. So generally, when we hear our zoning committee discussions, we bring that stuff to county board the next month. Otherwise, we're having to have this 10 days prior to county board meeting, because there are state statutes that require that 10-day wait period.
Okay, thank you. That answers that. Okay, so I
And
think
you could have it before county board, but any actions you take this month would still go on to the following months.
so. Then just looking at this calendar again, if it's after the normal county board meeting, then it's going to be, then it could be any day of the week, because there's no other meetings. If it was on that Monday or Tuesday following the county board.
So Chairman, do you just want us to bring ideas and suggestions to the October meeting?
I do, but I want to also give an idea to the administrator and Kathy on some.
Well, obviously, we like that they're during the day because, this is our job. No, I understand that doesn't work for the committee members. Do I want to have another meeting that's at 6:30 on a Tuesday or Thursday or Friday at the end of the month? No, but I mean, that's ultimately what I signed up for. So at the end, I don't really care.
10:30.
What about like what about
1 a.m.?
like
That'd be great. They
1
probably would be
p.m.?
on.
What about a 1
That would be
p.m.
that would
on
be
Monday or Tuesday?
sure.
I know it's still. I mean, personally, that would work better for me than a Friday from 8 to 12.
Well, ultimately, if the schedules don't work, you could switch committee members, right?
So what you're
I mean,
saying,
you
though,
can switch committees.
Jesse and
Yeah.
Ms. Hessel,
No,
is Fridays is the problem, right? Friday's the day of the zoning.
I think Friday's a problem. Yes, I think the day for me is a bigger issue than the time.
So, well, I know we're gonna bring this back and we're gonna discuss it, but everybody's in favor of a afternoon one. I'd be okay with that too. I mean,
I'm not.
But not Friday afternoon.
not Friday, no.
No, oh god,
No.
please no.
So the only concern I have is not even necessarily the time or the date, it's just the length.
Yeah, and
I don't
that's
know
something
your issue, but
that
how you help that.
we could potentially, limit applications based upon how long the agenda is looking, and I'll reach out to Andy on that as far as, is there any type of limitations as when we receive, applications. If we have 2 rezones and 2 conditional use permits that we say, yes, we're gonna accept your application, but because of other applications already submitted, your hearing will not be heard until the following month. I mean, you're still.
I think we should just meet every Friday. How about every Friday we get together? How about that?
Every week.
Every Friday.
Lord.
I don't hear a motion in favor of that, though.
Do you hate us? Do you hate us?
No, I love this. This is good stuff.
Yeah, I think you should mute him now.
Submit some ideas.
I'm missing 2 of these.
I have them.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So there's it's just discussion. I would make the recommendation that in October, everyone bring their calendar books and, really, circle the calendar as to, this date and this time works, this date, this time works. We'll try to get a consensus to what works best for everyone involved. I like this committee. I like these committee members. I don't want to see someone say, hey, I can't go at that time, and then they, then they're off. So let's try to work together on something like that. But I guess, moving forward, if we bring it back in October, and we'll make action items at that point then too.
Great.
Last one I have is the sample opinion letter. I talked last month about changing the opinion letters that we sent out to individuals. This one's going to be really quick because within the zoning committee bylaws, I would have to first change the zoning committee bylaws before we look at changing the opinion letters that are sent out to adjacent property owners. Within the zoning committee bylaws, it states that a form opinion letter shall include the following: that a statement of the comments, that a statement encouraging the property owner to provide additional information. So we're going to stay with the original opinion letters that are sent out. But if this committee wants to, again, change that process, it's first going to have to start with a change to the bylaws. And maybe that's something I bring back as an agenda item if this committee wants that back as an agenda item to change the zoning committee bylaws that doesn't have the requirements of how the opinion letters need to be submitted out. This was something that Rebecca had drafted up for us, and she basically took our original form letters and inputted that into the bylaws.
Yes, I would like to, you can add that to the agenda to try to change or amend those bylaws.
And that'll take a couple months, so we'll have to live with how the current one is. Now, you'd have to have a public hearing process at zoning committee to change your bylaws. That then gets forwarded on the county board, and county board would have to approve your committee bylaw change. But it wouldn't have to be sent out to the town. It's not a town issue. Right. So I'll get that on as an agenda item. I'll work with Andy to potentially change those and change that section. We'll probably have to do one discussion about it first, then a public hearing, then back to county board.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to adjourn if we need it.
We don't need a motion to adjourn, but is there any other comments, discussion?
Well, I just have one real quick. I think it's nice that we have the last week of the month all off. So if we're going to take any vacations or time off, it's nice to keep that open.
I agree. I'm going to Canada because of that.
Yep. If we're going to have changed the zoning committee at all, I would like it to be when we're here anyways with other meetings. It's my only comment.
That would limit us to the Friday after.
No.
Right, we can stack.
We could stack.
Yeah.
So we know you got finance at
It just comes
8:30.
with
We
next
could do
month's
it
county
at
board.
10 a.m. or 11 a.m. during the day.
Yep.
Those are
Well, after
Like when you're in
finances,
town,
I
it's
guess.
about
I have
for other
the
things.
times that their meetings
Okay.
Yep.
start, so.
That's all, Jesse.
Okay.
I like that week at the end of the month where we can do whatever. we
Honestly,
want.
I didn't even think of that.
Yep.
Yeah, because you're going to Lucky Bar. You're late. You gotta get out of here.
I'm not going to, I'm going to work.
Oh.
I'm going to work 12-hour days for the next. Oh, you love it.
All right.
All right.
We're adjourned.
Thank you.
We're adjourned.
Have a good weekend.
Thank you, Andy.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.